Okay, welcome everybody. This is Brizer here again, doing another film review. It's Sunday, April the 30th, 2023, and I'm here with my usual buddies again, Ognir and Btwixt. How you doing, guys?
Doing good.
Good. And we have a special guest who's decided to join us as well. Himself and Btwixt have done a couple of podcasts together. He goes by the name of Pox Populi. He's Italian. Well, he's born in the States, but his parents, he's of Italian-Irish origin, now living in Spain. So it's good to have him on board as well. So we're welcome, Pox. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
Yeah, so the movie we're going to be doing today this evening, is The Truman Show. I think a lot of people have heard of this one, and it's a pretty good movie, actually, this one. There's a lot of stuff in it, so we could be going for a bit on this one, but we'll try and cover out everything that we can. Basically, it's a 1998 movie, directed by Peter Weir, produced by Scott Rudin, and it stars Jim Carrey as the main character in it. Also cast is Laura Linney, Ed Harris, Noah Emmerich, Natasha McElhone, who else? Paul Giamatti, Brian Delate, and others. But I suppose, guys, where would we start with this? I mean, who wants to go with this? Because there's so much to kind of talk about here, because we could be all living in a Truman Show, and I think, we could be even living in a simulated reality, and I think there could be something to that. And there's a lot of that in this, like a world within a world. And that's how it feels, particularly the last couple of years, this whole COVID nonsense. Felt like to me that we were living in some kind of crazy reality, which didn't make too much sense. And now when looking back on it, it really does. It was absolutely crazy. So who wants to go first on this one? Will we start with our new guest, Pox Populi, to go first?
Oh, well, thank you. I would say, first of all, that this film really, if I had to answer, what is the film that that stuck with you the most? What's your favorite film, even, I suppose? Although it might not be my favorite film, but if I had to say which film had the greatest effect on my life, it would be this one. It would be The Truman Show. I've seen this film several times, and the first time I saw it as a small boy, it really lingered with me. And it might have even provoked something which is now considered a psychological disorder. Give that as much credit as you want. But there is something called Truman Syndrome now, where people develop a sort of delusion or paranoia that they are being watched by cameras, that their life is scripted. It's a sort of scripted reality TV show. And I just thought that, when I first saw this as a boy, there were so many scenes that reflected real life that you could think, wow, could that be scripted? Could that be staged by some controllers of my life? We can get into those scenes later, but I'm really looking forward to talking about this film, because it actually is a film that really has left a mark on my life, on me as a viewer.
Yeah, I'll agree too. I mean, I think the first time I saw it was in the early 2000s, and at first I thought it was just kind of a comedy thing, but I knew there was something else to it, and I couldn't quite get it. But that was a time, remember these TV reality shows were becoming big on TV, like Big Brother, and then what's the other ones that followed? I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and all these different ones that followed on from that. So the timing was kind of interesting that it all happened around then. And that whole concept of living, in a TV reality show, like living in a house, cameras on you 24/7, and particularly this reality show called Big Brother, because how obvious can you get? But yeah, so we have this guy Truman Burbank is his name. It's interesting that his name is Burbank, because that's where big Hollywood studio is as well, in Los Angeles. So interesting how they use that name. There's lots of little things in this which I noticed again just watching it last night. Just a lot of little that you keep missing sometimes, but then once you watch it again, it just, God, I didn't notice that. So And basically, he was born into a TV reality show, even from birth, from particularly conception, really, till he was born. And he was born into this world which he thought was the world that is normal. He had parents and friends and relations and everything. And then he goes up, he gets married, and all the stuff that people do, which we all think is normal. And he didn't think any different until things started to kind of go wrong a bit. There was all these little things like stuff falling out of the sky and small little things, and he's kind of going, what the hell's going on here? So slowly but surely he starts to figure out that this wasn't real, that it was just a complete reality show. So we'll head over to Btwixt then, and what's your take on it after watching it?
I first watched this film about 3 years ago. And the reason I was so long in watching it is because back in the late 90s when it came out, I think Jim Carrey, there was another film around the same time, Man in the Moon. And I saw the advertisement for it. I heard people talking about it. And the synopsis was, there's a guy, his life is a TV show. Everyone knows, all the other actors know, but he doesn't because he's kind of stupid. And I just thought, yeah, that sounds a bit simplistic. I'm not in any rush to watch it. And then when I did get around to watching it, obviously, it floored me, the concept. And you mentioned, Brizer, that, about reality TV and Big Brother, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I believe this film inspired a lot of the reality TV that followed, because if you remember in this movie, the audience, their lives are lived through the one life of this Truman Burbank, and you've got scenes of people in a bar. They're all in the bar and they're watching the film, they're watching the TV show, and they're all commenting together. Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? Whoa, whoa, whoa. And then you've got this, he seems like a middle-aged loser in a bathtub. He's watching TV in a bathtub and he falls asleep watching the Truman Show. That's part of he'll watch it until he falls asleep. And, you said the studio owns him, and they have built this studio to such a scale that they say that it can be seen from space, along with the Wall of China. This studio can be seen from space. Also, his first appearance on TV is before he was born, because there's video footage. It's like the scan of the womb where, you can see him inside the womb. So it's all being mapped out for him. And that's all I have to say for the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. And Ognir, your take on it?
Well, I don't know. I think I sent you on the link to the movie on Rumble earlier about a week ago, and I struggled to kind of get looking at it. I watched it a few minutes, and anyway, eventually I got going today, and I saw it. Now I did see it many years ago. I remember it as a Hollywood, more Hollywood nonsense. I didn't have a TV at the time, so I don't remember where I actually see it. Probably downloaded it. So what happens? You was correct there that we see the images of Truman as an unborn baby. So the studio have 5 contestants, 5 pregnant women that don't want their babies, that are going to abort or whatever. And the TV station, or their group, have taken all the rights. Truman arrived on time and he was selected. So when we get into the movies, when we get into the movie, it starts on day 10,909. So from the day he was born, all his baby steps, his first tooth, the first time he had a crap, whatever, was always filmed like reality Big Brother. I mean, Brizer is right. I mean, that's played on from this many years later, where you're filmed the whole time. So when we joined the movie, he's just under 30 years of age. So he's about a month away from his birthday. And actually, I actually enjoyed a little bit of it today. I mean, it's still there's some hidden meanings in it. Some of the characters in it. Anyway, it was easy. It was fairly easy to rewatch, and I already remember the story. And I think the movie actually does give people. I can see why people are a little bit paranoid that they are being filmed, because we are being filmed everywhere we go. So, listen, I enjoyed some of the scenes. I mean, it's a very simple movie. You know, a low IQ, and you still enjoy the movie. It's not a. It's what you read into it. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah, okay then, right. So just the reality show, the Truman Show, is set in a place called Sea Haven, and this town actually exists, but it's called Seaside, and it's near Tampa in Florida. And it looks like a very nice place to live. It's on the ocean, obviously. It's all got these white picket fences, and you know, it looks like something out of the American dream. And Truman seems quite happy in his little life, you know. As the movie starts, pretty much we see him like he's got his wife, who's a typical kind of, you know, girl next door type of thing, and he's going off to his work one morning. Of course, he's got his neighbours he always says good morning to, you know, and if in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, you know. And it's always the same kind of scene nearly every day. So he's getting into his car, and or just before he gets into a car, something falls out of the sky, and he doesn't know what it is, and it looks like a big light or a kind of something out of a studio, which obviously it fell out of the the studio which was filming him through the sky. And so he couldn't figure out what it was, and then he just left it, got into his car, and then he's on the on the road to work, and the radio comes on. He has the radio on all the time, and there's a camera in the radio, in his car radio. There's cameras everywhere in this place, so that brings in the surveillance angle of everything. And that's of course so true now. Like there's just cameras everywhere. But these in his life, there's cameras everywhere. People have tiny little cameras on their clothes, and on their hats, and they're in lampposts and steering wheels and whatever. But anyway, the radio guy comes on and says, "Oh, an airplane flew over Sea Haven today, and something fell out of it, and thankfully nobody was hurt. But back to today's programming, blah blah blah." Right? So he goes into work, and again, it's just he works in an insurance office, and you know, pretty dead end, but it's a kind of a nice, safe, secure job, you know. And he's been told that he has to get his quotas in for the month because they're going to have cutbacks and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of then leads on to him. He brings back memories then of he's sitting on the beach. He goes and sits on the beach one day, or one evening, or one night actually, and then it starts to rain, and you notice that the rain shower just falls on him and nowhere else. And he's again looking at this, going, "What the hell's happening here?" And he's playing around a bit, and then obviously they made a mistake in the studio, and then the proper rain shower came down, and so we'll take it from there then, guys. Who wants to go next? We'll keep it in the same order as we did. Pox, back to you.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, that initial scene where he's in his car, and every passing automobile is used as a camera to keep him always on screen. He always has to be on screen, and there's cameras attached to the streetlights. Some not so subtle, but again, this is 1998 when the film was made. Constant surveillance wasn't exactly as widespread as it is now, and as accepted as it is now. And so he's not really, looking for these things. He's not noticing these things. And it's interesting how, when this film came out, one of the things that people said, or whatever, and I remember even saying as a boy, and I was quite concerned after seeing this film, like, is this possible? Could this be done? Could we be in a giant dome studio and our lives are just this scripted entertainment spectacle for a director somewhere. And the response was, no, look, it's not possible. You couldn't do this. It's impossible, because the technology, the surveillance technology, just wasn't there yet. But very quickly, a few years after the release of this film, we were there. So it's interesting to see how they employed hidden cameras and CCTV and moving cameras. And there's all sorts of moments in that opening sort of few scenes where we notice that the extras, basically, the people who've been cast to play, the street sweeper, the postman, they have cameras on their lapels. They have hidden cameras as buttons on their shirts, and so it's very well thought out. It's very, very interesting. And another thing too is that as he's driving along and he's going to work, he hears the news say that something fell from the sky from that passing plane, but everything's fine. Okay, get on with the rest of your day. And this is another thing that I'm sure we're going to talk about as the conversation goes on, is how that represents media propaganda, how it conditions our behavior, how it conditions our thoughts. There's all sorts of references to this. So I'll leave it there for now, so we don't get too ahead of ourselves. But even in the opening scenes, there's a lot to chew on.
Yeah, there is. And at the very, very beginning, they actually interview the main actors. They're basically in this for as long as this Truman Show continues. So they interview his wife, whose name is Meryl, and then his best buddy. What was his name again? I can't. It just left me there. Louis.
Ginger with freckles.
Yeah.
Marlon is his name.
Marlon, yeah. And so they interview them and like, what's their part in this? And they say, well, it's not real, but it's real, and we're in it for the long haul. But you made some good points there, Pox, about the these strange things happening, and we as people going through our lives, we notice these strange things. That's maybe how we get on this awakening process. We kind of go, hold on, that's a bit strange there, but then the media jump in immediately and say, oh, nothing to see here, move along, and so even like, as I say, like going back the last couple of years, like, oh, there's a deadly pandemic going on here and the virus is going to kill you and all that. And people who might have questioned about this, how bad this was, it was saying, no, this is really, we got to be careful and stay safe and all this kind of stuff. So you're right about how the media is, it plays a big part in it. And I think there's lots of different aspects to all of this. Like there's the whole thing about a simulated reality. There's surveillance. There's religious overtones in it. So there's lots of stuff here that we can kind of get into. So back to you, Btwixt. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I just go way back. One of the first scenes of Truman on whatever Ognir said the day was 1,000, or I don't know how many thousand days. He's in front of the mirror in his bathroom. Go on, Ognir. How many days?
10,909.
Okay. I said I'd ask the man with the numbers. So, yeah, he's in front of his bathroom mirror, and he doesn't realize that the mirror is a camera. It's like an interrogation room, really, and he can't see that there's a camera behind it. And every morning he does this. He's kind of being mentally stunted by the production company. He's been mentally stunted. Like he's like a 7-year-old boy in a man's body, and he's doing these impersonations, and he's talking as if he's climbed the mountain and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny. And then you hear his wife in the background calling him, come on, you should go to work. So it's kind of, he's like a kid, but yet he has to go to this grown-up job, as you say, in insurance. So I thought that was interesting. And Pucks mentioned the conditioning, and that's something else. You know, this operant conditioning where, you know, he's punished if he does a certain thing, and his whole personality, you know, the creation of his personality came from script writers. The same way people's, you know, behavior in the last 3 years, it came from script writers, speech writers, and then, you know, from the mouths of politicians and big business people. So the fact that you know, we get it looks like flashbacks, but they're really reruns of previous episodes. So, for example, when his father was, in inverted commas, still alive, you know, his father, he was going to climb up some hill, and his father stopped him and said, no, you don't want to go up there, you don't want to go up there. And Truman wants to see what's on the other side. So we do get that, and we feel sorry for him, because everyone, and this is a horrible thing, everyone in his life is in on the scam. And, you know, they must be ruthless people that they could work alongside him for 30 years. And apart from the odd, I think there are 1 or 2 exceptions, but everyone else, you know, they read their lines and they pretend that this is a real world. And they continue every second, they're lying to Truman's face.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, and Ognir.
Well, listen, I agree with you, what you've been saying. You know, it's I think that the line there where everyone was in on it, it kind of reminds me of the COVID scam, that everyone was in it that shouldn't have been in on it, and these people need to be sorted out. Now, as it's just been a Hollywood script, you know, there's I read a lot more into Hollywood movies. You know, we now know, or we've known for, you know, many years, that the U.S. military have funded and scripted over 400 movies. Okay, they're war movies and whatever. So if ever you see any U.S. Army movies from any year, we now know that the U.S. Army was involved in everything, and the scripts would never pass unless they put it. So the same again here with Truman, and as you know, as I said, everyone was in it, and the part which you said Btwixt about a stunted 7-year-old in a man's body is exactly what it is. I mean, it's very simple. I mean, the script is very simple. There's nothing very. They're trying to make a movie around filming of this one kid growing up, and everything is scripted. How he meets his wife. Although there's a little bit of a story when he meets his wife that she wasn't the particular girl that he was interested in. I also find it interesting when we talk about it, there was a couple of different hijacking of the script, if I could say it that way, where several ex-employees made a reappearance and tried to warn Truman and other people. Now you have to remember that this is running 24 hours a day, so he's nearly 30 years of age. So most of the people, Btwixt mentioned that people are sitting in the bar. You have a guy watching in his bath. You have 2 old ladies on the couch looking at TV. People, you know, just to show him when he sleeps. I was thinking about what did he do when he masturbated when he was growing up, and the love scenes with the wife, but apparently they played music and put the camera out the window. So yeah, it's very simple unless you're reading something else into it. I mean, we've already caught on the surveillance every time if he goes to the toilet or he's in front brushing his teeth. It's 2-way cameras. Everything is filmed. They're all linked in. They're all wearing. I didn't see anyone actually wearing an earpiece, but one of the scenes he's driving his car after this lamp had fallen, and he's getting a bit suspicious. And sorry. he was getting a little bit suspicious. But since they all have earpieces, they all know what he's doing, so it's very difficult for him to get one step ahead. Now he got this into his head. He wants to go to Fiji. I leave it there. His big thing is he wants to go to Fiji.
Yeah, that kind of that's kind of fairly kind of close to the beginning as well. Like, what's so special about Fiji? But another thing as well is that it's going back to the media side of it all. Is that you notice that there's product placement everywhere, and when the wife comes on and says, "Hi Truman, we're going to make such and such food here today, all made perfectly well, great ingredients, blah blah blah," you know, and showing it up, and of course. The guy who produces this whole Truman Show, his name is Christoph, which is an interesting one. Maybe we could talk about that, why that name. He explains that, well, it's a 24/7 show. There's no commercial breaks, so they have to put product placement in everywhere. And of course, again, if you notice in a lot of TV movies or anything on TV, there's product placement everywhere. You'll always see a Coke bottle behind somewhere, or you'll always see, you know, a Mars bar or something. You'll always notice that it's there, so that's very prominent in the whole thing.
And beer.
His buddy Marlon comes around and says, "Oh, we got this great, you know, that's a fine beer, Marlon or Truman," you know, and holding it up to the camera. He's sitting on a kind of what looks like a bridge, which is only halfway built across the. Whatever, a creek or something. They're fishing, and he says, "Oh, I want to go to Fiji. I think you know, do you think there's more to else? You know, have you traveled anywhere?" And he says, "Oh, I've been around the world, Truman, but there's no place like Sea Haven. This is the place to be." And then what kind of hit home with that to me was, well, isn't this the 15-minute city that everyone's now talking about? You know, that everything is here in Sea Haven. You got it. You don't need to go to Fiji or Chicago or wherever, you know. You can stay right here. Got all your friends here. You got your job. And Marlon's jealous of him a bit because he says, "You got a great job. You got a desk job, Truman. I just load these vendors, you know, with chocolate bars and stuff. That's all I do, you know." So then we begin to figure out why he wants to go to Fiji, and it kind of goes back to when he was younger, and he was at some fair or carnival or something. He played in a band, in a kind of a marching band type of thing, and he notices this girl across the way, and they're kind of looking at each other, and you know, she's there for a minute and then she's gone, and then all of a sudden the girl who plays his wife, Meryl, falls over him, and they start chatting and whatever, and then eventually, of course, they marry, right? But so he was always, you know, and then later on that evening, there's a dance on in the local hall or something, and they're all dancing around the floor, and this girl is there again, and he kind of says, "I need to get to know who she is," you know, and she does find him. He does find her in the library then, and I think he tries to warn her. But maybe I missed something else, guys. So do you want to go back to Pox again? Did anything else in there?
Well, one thing I want to talk about, and Btwixt kind of mentioned it. He said that he's a stunted character. He's a little bit immature, and it's also kind of cruel and ruthless what these actors are doing. What they've embroiled themselves in for I assume, a very handsome paycheck to devote so much of their lives also to this reality show. But they also remember they traumatize Truman, and the use of fear and trauma is really quite effective. And as you're alluding to there, he wants to go to Fiji. And it's really interesting how they use fear and trauma and also other methods to sort of dampen his wanderlust. So you mentioned his friend tells him there's no place like home. I've been around and there's no place better than this, Sea Haven, fictitious place. But there's also a scene from his childhood in school where his school teacher, he wants to be an explorer like Ferdinand Magellan. And his school teacher tells him, well, I'm sorry, Truman, I'm sorry to tell you this, but there's just nowhere left to explore. There's nothing left to find. It's all been done. So, just quashing his dreams there. But in a way, that's true. There isn't much to explore as far as, land masses are concerned. If you want to be an explorer like Magellan and find new land, well, maybe that's not far from the truth to say there isn't much left to explore. And then earlier, I think Btwixt mentioned a scene where his father tells him not to climb too far up a hill because he was going to touch the side of the dome that is the studio. But remember what they also do with his father character. He dies in a boating accident, and that they associate that with his desire to sail like an explorer, like Magellan. Well, now his father dies in a boating accident, drowns at sea, and they use that to traumatize him so that he'll never want to sail again and he'll never want to travel again. They do all these little things to keep him from traveling. And also, if you notice when he goes to the travel agency to start getting the ball rolling on his dream one-way trip, probably to Fiji, there's all these posters and all the brochures are, instead of promoting these dream holidays, these fantastic vacations, there's a poster on the wall with a lightning bolt going through the wing of an airplane, and it says it could happen to you. And there's just all this subtle fear propaganda. And that, again, was another thing that clicked with me, even the very first time I saw it, of just how accurately that reflects what is done in the real world. If it bleeds, it leads. All these shows about how dangerous the world is. And of course, we have 2.5 years of a perfect example with the COVID fear-mongering, and how easy it was for them to create so much fear and hysteria over a virus that then they also told us, pretty much everyone has a 99% survival rate. But those little things of how they traumatized him and how they used fear to keep him from accomplishing his dreams, to keep that sort of Faustian spirit repressed. I think this is massively important. I think this is one of the major problems of modern life, is that we are all kind of living as these repressed automatons, and we have very little outlet for our adventurous spirit, our Faustian spirit. There's this meme, I don't know if you've seen it, I love it. It shows it's only 4 panels, and the first panel is a man, this blonde man, bearded, hunting in the jungle. The second panel is him attacking a massive wild boar and stabbing it and taking off its its pelt, its bloody fur, and making that into his new clothes. And then the next panels are the same man, only now he's got a receding hairline, but it's the same man, just 30,000 years later. And it's him in a shopping center, and his wife is holding up clothes to him to see if they look good. And so that's just a representation of how far we progressed, quote unquote, where we used to have to hunt and be wild and masculine and savage and hunt for our food and clothes, make our clothes out of animal hides. And now, our wives take us to the local shops and they decide what we wear. And so I just thought that was so well done. The little things they do to keep him scared, but also that immense trauma they do to him as a boy. And I think that also speaks to some realities about how childhood experiences and childhood traumas can really affect the development of a person intellectually, their personality. It can repress them. It can quash a lot of their dreams. And the way they do that to them is, of course, like Btwixt said, it's very ruthless and cruel. but it's also brilliant. It's genius on the part of the producer of this show, but it's evil genius.
Yeah, that's correct. And as I said, that scene in the travel agents was pretty kind of out there, wasn't it? There was that poster, and then there was another poster saying, "You take a big risk traveling abroad. There's terrorists and earthquakes and all those. You're at risk."
It's just so funny because it's a complete inversion of what usually happens in a travel agency, where they want you to spend their money and they want you to go somewhere. But in Truman's world, they're doing everything they can. So I thought it was, it's a very comedic scene because it's the absurdity of it. It's the comedy of the absurd, where you go into a travel agency and they're doing everything they can to put you off, to frighten you.
Yeah, it was like as well. The woman then taps on the computer. She says, "I want to leave today," he says, and she's tapping away on the computer. Basically, the computer says no. Got to wait a month before you can do this. So then he goes off. But we find out the reason why he wants to go to Fiji anyway is because this lady Lauren that he really fancied. He met her in the library. Eventually, got talking to her, and then he went down to the beach and. He thought it was great, there's his new love and everything, and then she's trying to warn him that this is all fake, everything's fake, and you've got to try and get out of this and whatever, So she obviously felt sorry for him. She was an actress in this, could see what was going on, felt sorry for him, and tried to warn him, and said, "They're going to come and get me." And sure enough, a car comes over the sand dunes, and a guy gets out pretending to be his father, or her father, says, she's deranged, we've had this problem with her for a long time, she's always doing this to her boyfriends. And Truman doesn't know what was going on, says, "We're moving anyway, we're going to Fiji." So that's why he wants to go there. So Btwixt, over to you then.
All right, yeah, just a few things I noticed. You already mentioned Brizer, the wife. Every so often she'll just speak as if Truman's not in the room and she's speaking to a camera, and he finds this really weird. As he becomes more suspicious of his environment, he finds it very strange. And I got the feeling that she was like a cutout from a 1950s commercial. It's that sort of style of advertising, And then this guy Marlon, his best friend, the guy he went to school with, I think he says he knows him since he was 7. He's like the pressure valve that every time Truman is down in the dumps or is in this case becoming suspicious of everyone and everything, Marlon rocks up at his house with a 6-pack of beer, and I just think that's quite funny. And yet Truman doesn't suspect Marlon. He's been best friends with this guy. He'll suspect everyone else, including his wife, but he won't suspect his best friend. And it's quite ruthless. And you can see there's a scene where the guy who plays Marlon, he's got an earpiece in. And his words aren't his words. He's being, dictated to by Christoph up in the moon base, So, there's a complete lack of sincerity. Everything is insincere. And there's a great scene, and I noticed this when I watched it recently, when, Truman is flipping out. He's supposed to, say, for example, he's supposed to go to his office, but he wants to do something different. He's kind of getting paranoid. And instead of going to the office, he'll try and run into another building. And I think at one stage he runs into another building and there's an elevator. When the doors open, it's really just, TV people in the lift. There's not really a lift or something. And, he finds this, Truman finds this all very strange, and he goes to Marlon. So Marlon will have been told, Truman's on his way to you. You better start pretending that you load vending machines for a living. So when Truman is talking to him, we can see Marlon loading a vending machine. And it's funny, he puts in a few chocolate bars, I think maybe a few bags of crisps. But when Truman's not looking, he takes them out and loads them again. And I just thought that was brilliant. Really, really good.
I didn't actually notice that. I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
Right. Check it out.
Yeah,
It's quite funny. He puts the stuff in the vending machine, and when you see the vending machine again, the things are gone, and he's loading them again. So he's kind of on a constant loop. He's just pretending to be busy, which is funnily enough, is how many people live their lives when they work for companies. They find a lot of downtime, and yet they have to pretend that they're doing something. Pox mentioned, the teacher in the school. This is a very common case of, the purpose of the education system, which is to crush your dreams. It's to take away your autonomy. It's to make you do what everyone else is doing. Be a model citizen. We spoke about the conditioning, and he has this fear of water because, in one of the reruns, that's how his father died. You guys mentioned it already. That's how his father died. His father seemingly drowned while they were sailing a boat in the lake or in the sea. And this kind of reminds me of a B.F. Skinner experiment, with his Skinner box, where he'd put a rat into a box and he'd, electrocute the rat every so often, make the rat fearful of a certain corner of the box or whatever. So this is exactly what they're doing to Truman. They're treating him like a lab animal. Instead of it being for research, it's to make massive profits. It's to climb the ratings, the TV ratings. And another thing is that his wife, I've mentioned that Marilyn is a pressure valve. His wife is another pressure valve, but she's less effective than Marilyn. And it's funny, like you mentioned, the thing falling from the sky. There are other things that happens. The elevator. When he gets home from work in the evening, whatever he noticed, she'll be there to say, "Oh, I was just watching the TV. There was a terrible, accident with the elevator. I hope everyone's all right." Or something fell from the sky. It was an airplane. Something fell off the airplane. Imagine if it had hit someone. This type of thing, which tries to justify everything. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and also the thing about the father dying on the boat, because they're out on their sailing boat, and the father says, "Oh, we better go ashore, Truman, because it looks like there's a storm coming up." And he says, "No, Daddy, no, let's stay out a bit longer." Of course, the storm comes and the boat kind of topples over, and his father allegedly drowns. Of course, it's all a big act anyway. But so he feels extremely guilty because of this, And then we get to the scene where he meets his dad again, I'm not sure if he comes back in deliberately, but he's playing a homeless guy. So Ognir, do you want to take it from there? Is there anything else you want to put in there?
Yeah, well, just moving on from the boating accident. You have to remember that this is based this is all in their little dome. The weather is controlled. They push a few dials on the computer, and they can have rain and storms and thunder and whatever. So everything is controlled. But he is very traumatized from losing his dad. Now his dad does come back into it as a bum, as a homeless person. Later on in the film, and he was there to warn him. But we then notice the Christoph, the producer of this show, does a real TV interview. He's being asked by an ass licker, how great you are and where'd you get the ideas and for this. And he said, it's a genius that you're going to work, because for Truman, his dad had died when he was a young kid, and here we are 22 years later, and he sees his dad as a bum on the street. So they walk past each other. Truman turns around, and you have to imagine that this is all scripted. Everyone is in on the game. The TV crowd noticed that the bum is actually the father, and they rush him off. And so Truman turns around, realizes that's his dad, and he goes to go over to him. And then in the next 40-50 seconds, they throw everything at him. A marching band comes by, a car accident, or he's nearly run over by a car, and they shuffle the father into a bus and they take him out of there. So he's definitely, at this stage, he knows there's something wrong. But it's Hollywood. The scripts can be changed. So they decide that the father, they're going to rewrite him back into the story and just say it was amnesia. the part I'm trying to kind of, in my head, I've had 3 years of COVID nonsense hoax, and I'm trying to kind of how does this fit? How does the Truman Show? Is there any comparisons with the COVID? And the first one I noticed was so Christoph has been interviewed, and they're talking about his father showing up in the scene, and the producer said, but that's not the first time. And then you see different scenes from earlier on when Truman was a kid, and some guy from outside the studio jumped out of the box, a birthday box or something, a birthday cake, and tried to warn Truman that there was something on. And then you see a few clips where people have come on and tried to save him, tried to tell him what was going on, including the girl on the beach and the fake rain and all of that scene. And I do see a similarity with the COVID, because there were very few of us that were very vocal. I mean, compared to the 5 billion that are vaxxed, Pox, first time to hear you tonight. The rest of us figured it out fairly quickly about the COVID scam. And if I look at different countries, Ireland, Switzerland, France are the countries I know best. The percentage of people that demonstrated against the COVID would be probably about the same percentage of the people in the movie that tried to warn Truman. That's kind of I'm probably projecting here, but I'm still trying to make sense of the last 3 years, and that we are in a TV show, and this isn't real reality, that we're a virtual simulation.
Yeah, good points there. And again, you're talking about the weather manipulation, and when you think about chemtrails and different things like that, and how weather can be manipulated, so it's right there, isn't it? Is that part of this big TV movie script that we're involved in?
When he goes to get his newspaper, when he starts to really wants to get to Fiji, you see the local newspaper is saying that his town was the second best place in the world, or I don't think it was the best place in the world, but it was the second best place in the world. That the media, it's just another confirmation that the media lie. They've lied to us. I mean, I'm sure all four of us are well aware that they lie, and none of us would have any faith in them whatsoever. But there are a lot of gullible people, and the gullible people in the show are the people at the bar, the guy in the bath, the old ladies on the couch, that are tuning in every day for more and more and more of this. Now, I remember when Big Brother came out. I've never seen it. It was running 24 hours a day, and the script writers were, they're pushing to try to get couples. I don't even know what the story is with pushing to get couples together, and if they're a little bit naughty, and it's similar script without all the sex for the Truman Show, but very, very. I hadn't really actually thought about the thing, and I get back to it again, that his stunted growth in the movie. I mean, he's not a very educated person, deliberately by the studio. And one has to ask the question, is it possible that it would pull something like this on a bigger scale? We saw it in the last 3 years. Every expert told us the masks work, the distancing work, the vaccines work. And everything turned out to be like the same as the Truman Show.
Yeah, it is.
Just to say, Ognir, like we did see during we were told it was the height of the pandemic when we were under lockdown, and there were some people who, they went. In fairness, they went into the hospitals, and there were just empty corridors. There was nobody. There were ghost towns.
That's exactly my point, Btwixt, is. Yeah. Some people, a handful, maybe a couple of hundred people went into their local hospitals, but when you compare that to a population of 8 billion, it's a handful.
Yeah.
That was the point I was trying to make, that there's always a few of us out here on the fringe, and we're out here on the fringe. We know what we have a better idea of reality, and we don't need. First of all, if you come home, and this goes for all our listeners, if you come home and turn on the TV, you shouldn't be listening to this show. Or if you do, then get rid of your television. I don't see any point in having a television, because it's non-stop propaganda with product placement.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go back to this guy, Christoph, because this is kind of another interesting side to this, because obviously there's religious connotations here. Christ of, and the town that they're in is called Sea Haven. You could say is it heaven, as a haven. And of course it is a haven, that little town. It's a haven of peace and tranquility. It's like a utopia. Everything's perfect, everyone lives in a nice little house with a picket fence. Everyone's got a car in their driveway. All the neighbors are nice. Everybody works with everyone in the town is nice and friendly. And they're trying to push this kind of utopian vision, which is kind of, what they're trying, this great reset that we keep hearing about, is trying to push this utopian vision of that we'll all live in harmony together as one little planned community. This is where I talk about communitarianism, which is the exact same thing as what we were seeing here. So anyone want to take on Pox? What's your take on that whole why they use that name Christoph in particular, and any other things that you might have popped into your head there?
Well, the Christoph character is really interesting. The name, of course, Christopher, the Christ bearer, in translating to English, is the meaning of that name. And at one point, at the end, really, when there is the climax and Truman finds out what's been going on, there's a contact that a sort of conversation between Christoph and Truman, and Christoph says, "I'm God. I'm your creator." So there's definitely an analogy to be made there. Now, is he more of a Lucifer? Is he more of a demiurge, an imitator, a false god, an imposter? Sure, you could make that that comparison as well. But what I found really interesting is how this utopia that you've mentioned there, Brizer, it's the man-made utopia. It's this constant, particularly since the 20th century, this idea that mankind can create utopia, heaven on Earth, and have life just totally curated. Some elite few will totally curate life for the masses. They'll give them their bread and circus and their distractions. And, bread and circus comes from an old Latin phrase. So the idea of controlling the population through distraction, through entertainment, of course, goes back thousands of years. But in particular, since the 20th century, with industrialization and standardization, and now with high tech, the technological revolutions, it's never been easier. And what I, watching the film several times more as I get older and my values evolve and things that are important to me change, I can't help but looking at how, in order for Truman to get out of this man-made utopia created by the demiurge, created by this false god, he has to be Faustian. He has to be natural man. He has to be a true man. He has to be a man. He has to be a natural living creature, conquer his fears, go out onto the sea, brave the risks, and they do everything they can. They increase the waves. They create a tempest through all the special effects that they can have at their employ on this studio. And it's also very Nietzschean, because in the end, it's like he kills God. He escapes this utopia. He escapes this I guess in the misinterpreted version of Gnosticism. The Earth is this prison. It's prison planet, and to truly ascend into a higher plane, we have to somehow break free of this fallen Earth. That's actually not what the Gnostics believe. That's what they were misinterpreted to believe. But in a way, that's what he has to do. He has to break free of the demiurge's maladaptive, malicious world, and kill God, reject God. So there's a lot going on there. And then, of course, the name of the director is Christoph, which adds just another layer to it. So is this a bit of like a subversion, trying to get people to reject their faith in Christianity? I mean, that would not be the first time that Hollywood tries to do that. But it's another reminder, I think, of how, in particular, since industrialization, the idea that man can control nature, the idea it's also something that you see in the Matrix. You know, the Matrix universe, the Matrix world is comfortable. It has entertainment. It has juicy steaks, as we see when the traitor goes to have dinner with Agent Smith, when he agrees to betray the resistance. What does he do? He says, you know, I know this steak isn't real, but my mind is telling me that it's juicy and succulent, and I prefer this to the, you know, the crap that I'm eating in the real world. And so it's another thing we see in the Matrix is that the fake world is luxurious and comfortable and curated and arranged, and everything is kind of just made for you. It's ready-made. And the real world is a bit grim and trying, and the food is this, you know, sloppy mess, and they're wearing these drab clothes, but you have to live in the real world. You know, you cannot live in this fake creation produced by these malevolent beings, I think is the message behind both of these films here, which I think, you know, it's a very powerful thing to say. But yeah, the director and his name, and he even says it himself, you know, you're the star, Truman. And he says, well, then who are you? Well, I'm your creator. I'm God. Really powerful stuff.
Yeah, it sure is. Of course, you know, the name Truman, like he's the true man in a fake world. And everyone has this ideal of like living in a utopia. We'd like to live in a kind of perfect world where everything's just set out for you. You have your job, you have your nice wife, you have a nice little town you're living in, and everything's perfect, everything's nice. But that's not the way it works in real life. And I don't think really at the end of the day, that's what people want. People like challenges. And as we see, as this movie progresses, as Truman starts to notice all these anomalies happening around him, he realizes that this is not what it's supposed to be. There's something else going on. And he slowly but surely he begins to figure it out. So yeah, it's fascinating. Btwixt, what's your take on it?
I have similar perspectives to what Pox and you have said. So yeah, this Christoph, he has a God complex. He's up high, he's looking down upon his creation. And we see scenes of him later on in the movie where, you know, where Truman is going out of his mind. He's starting to question everything. And you see Christoph every so often, he's standing right beside that big TV screen, and he's stroking every time Truman, you know, appears on the screen. He puts his hand to the screen and he strokes the screen like he's Truman's father, you know. And you know, the thing with this Christoph, he's not actually down there in Sea Haven. He's completely disconnected from it. He has a bird's eye view, but he doesn't have his boots on the ground. And yeah, he looks upon Truman as his son, and you could speculate he looks upon Truman as a sort of Messiah, a Jesus Christ figure. But the thing is, you know, similar to Jesus Christ, Christoph will have no qualms when it comes to sacrificing him if need be. And that's the thing, it's called The Truman Show. No other actor, no other member of cast can carry the show but Truman. So if Truman is gone, the show is gone. And yeah, it just goes to show then from another angle that Truman belongs to the studio. So legally, Christoph can murder Truman, because Truman is just a company asset. And like all company assets, in time they depreciate. They have a shelf life. And you know, that's it. He loves Truman in a certain way, but in another way, he has that business mindset where Truman eventually is no longer worth keeping.
Yeah, that's right.
Brizer, I just thought there's getting back to the incident on the boat where his dad slipped off and apparently drowned. So from that scene when he's a kid, maybe 7, 8, 9, he's traumatized by water. So he's unable to leave where he is because of his fear of water. Now there are a couple of scenes that show this. One is he's in his office. He's an insurance salesman, and he gets a call from a client. He's on a call with a client, and the guy gives him his address, but he has to take the ferry to leave where he is to go see this client. And you see here that he's completely traumatized, never makes it to the boat. And what I found interesting was no one ever tried to help him with his traumatism. You know, they deliberately left in that part that he's so afraid of water, it would work to their advantage, and it was total tyranny from the TV crowd producing this 24/7 show. And there's another scene later on, about halfway through the movie. He wants to get out of his little town, and he has to drive across the bridge. So even to drive across the water, a bridge, he's absolutely scared out of his wits. So what he does is he hits the accelerator and tells his wife, his so-called wife, to steer. So he zigzags across the bridge, finally gets out of his town, and of course his wife, who's part of the story, she's looking for help from the studio. What are we going to do now? And the next scenes were quite funny. So he drives out of his town, and they come on the radio and said, I don't know, there's a sign saying forest fires, be careful of forest fires. And the next thing, they light a fire right across the road, and Truman drives through this, and he's nearly getting out. And next thing, there's a nuclear fallout in the nuclear plant, and he has to turn back around again. I thought it was hilarious. And there's different scenes that the next scene, he's in the car with his wife, and he said he's going to drive out of town. And as you see him, he's driving up this road, and just before he gets to the top of the road, all of these cars come out from the side roads and block him, and all of a sudden there's a traffic jam. But he's slightly up on it, so he spins around, turns around, goes around the street, and then goes back up the same street, and there's no cars and there's no traffic.
Just to say, Ognir, that reminds me of the David Gray song Babylon, where it says, all the lights are turning green to red.
Yeah.
And then
there's some parts of that film where he's in traffic, and when he's driving his car, and they do all that to distract him or to obstruct him. I grew up in a place where there was, urban sprawl, and you had to drive long distances just to go to, buy a bottle of milk. And it resonated with me because there would be occasions where, you would drive a very short distance. You drive 20 meters from one traffic light, and there'd be another traffic light just ahead, and, your light would turn green, you drive 20 meters, and that one would turn red. So now you're stopped again. And if you were running late, to school or to work, it was so frustrating. And so when they do all that to stop him, when he goes around, I think he goes around a roundabout, and all of these cars appear simultaneously, orchestrated, to block him off. And then he does he's actually quite, he's cottoned onto these things. So he waits a bit and he tries it again. And this time he outsmarts the cars, and he can drive off before they obstruct him. Just things like that, little things like that were very, I thought, very clever, and resonated with me a lot as someone who had to drive a lot growing up, doing these kind of commutes.
It was kind of his awakening. He's starting to wake up. He's noticing things aren't from the first scene where you have this studio light falling on the street, and he couldn't figure out where it was from. But no, it's
interesting as well. No, that there was a name on that light, Sirius, like the star. I thought that was interesting. I don't know what that was about. I think we have, it goes a bit esoteric there a bit, but it's like a star falling from the sky. It's
the question I ask. The question I'd ask here is, in your own normal life, and including the 3 years of COVID, I'm trying to match it with the Truman Show. I'm not particularly talking about the four of us, but At what stage in the last 3 years did people wake up and said, this isn't right? Now Truman is doing this, driving around. He wants to go to Atlantic City. Of course, but you don't gamble, you don't go there. And everything is, I'd ask the question towards COVID and the population of the planet. Now, 90% of the population didn't figure it out, and they'll never figure it out. And even if we bring these people to justice, they still won't figure it out. What does it take? What would it take in your own life to wake you up? If everything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Everything is. He's figuring out that there's several of them against him, except his friend Marlowe. But even as you said, Brizer, he doesn't trust his wife. He knows, but that wasn't a match made in heaven. He was interested in somebody else. But if you put that into your own life, at what stage do you have to call nonsense or bullshit on something and say, no, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I think if we compare this to real life, I compare it to the bar in the movie where you have everyone watching, when the bar is open, watching this and following the continuing tales of this series running. At what stage?
It's called a Truman Bar, by the way. It's called a Truman Bar. So there's actually. Yeah.
I missed that one, but
it's on their aprons. The waitresses, it's on their aprons. Yeah.
Yeah. At what stage will you say enough? And I think that goes into the real world. At what stage do you say enough is enough? This no more of this.
Yeah. So as I said, this obviously has been going on since the day he was born, or since his conception, really. So it only livens up, obviously, as he gets older, and then these things start happening, and he begins to one step at a time, begin to wake up to stuff. And that's, I think, with a lot of us who've woken up, we've taken it one step at a time to look at stuff and kind of go, that doesn't make sense. So you research it and you figure it out. And then there's something else. There's like more layers of the onion and trying to get through it all. And then eventually we get to some semblance of truth, And so anyway, and there was another scene as well, going back to the scene in the car with his wife. Remember, she comes back from the hospital after, because there's another scene again in the hospital. Remember, but some guy or some woman who broke her leg or something in the lift.
That's a particular scene. Just before his wife is in on this, he goes into this building.
Yeah.
Tries to go over towards this elevator, get on this elevator, but two women just closed the door of the elevator.
He's hustled out of the building then. He's going, get away.
But then the elevator door opens again, and in the background we can see that it's the backstage. It looks like a backstage of a theater production, and people are running around with mics, and there could be food and different stuff out there. So when he got home, his wife, since everyone is in on the plot against him, the wife brings you up to your point about the girl that lost her leg, that she had to amputate her leg, which brings us on to another scene when he rushes to the hospital.
Yeah, so he gets to the hospital then, and he wants to leave a message for his wife. And he says, oh no, she's in surgery. And anyway, he finds a way to get to the surgery and looks through the window. And of course, they're all actors, the doctor doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Well, we will make an incision here, maybe, waiting for someone to get Truman out of there, before they actually do any kind of surgery or anything, And then when she gets home, he's sitting in the car, and she says, look in the mirror, look in the car mirror here, And then a woman goes by on a bicycle, and another guy walks past with a bunch of flowers in his hand. And a Volkswagen Beetle goes past as well. And he says, it's all in a loop, And so everything's becoming clearer for him now. He's kind of gone, this all looks very staged to me, or there's something happening. But as Btwixt, as you said earlier on, his mate Marlon, he trusts implicitly. And Marlon always steps in there just at the right time. to say, oh, it's okay, man, you know, you're having a bad day at work or whatever, and you're under stress, you know. And again, like talk about his wife, you know, there's different when they cross that bridge. She's in the car and she doesn't know what the hell is going on, and obviously she's got a mic on her and says, "How can you expect me to carry on under these circumstances? You know, these conditions." You know, and he's looking at her going, "What do you mean by that?" So there's just always these little nuggets of information just drop in, and he you know, eventually the dots begin to join. And right, back to Pox anyway, we can kind of continue. And say, because there's lots of different angles here, and we're jumping ahead of some scenes and we're coming back, but they all interlink.
Yeah.
So Pox, where do you want to take it from here?
These are the small things that these small things were the reason why the film had such an effect on me, and I think it's also why the film created that thing that I mentioned at the start, the Truman syndrome, because I don't know about you fellas, but as I was growing up, like I said, I saw this movie. You know, it came out in 1998. I probably saw it maybe a year later on VHS. So I would have been 11 years old. And then, you know, I saw it several more times. It was one of my favorite movies as a teenager. I watched it many more times. And another comparison to The Matrix. The Matrix does this as well. In the first scene, the first film of the trilogy, where they enter the Matrix, and the Neo and the crew are going up this spiral staircase or something in this old abandoned building, and there's about to be some confrontation of some sort. And Neo sees a black cat go by twice, and he says, "Oh, deja vu." And then the rest of the crew, the veterans, you know, they all know what that means in the Matrix. Deja vu means a glitch in the Matrix. It means they've changed something. It means, you know, there's going to be a change to the programming. So they you know, the agents must know that we are here, and so the tension increases. And the Truman Show does this as well. They find things like the Matrix did with deja vu, these things that we can't explain. And in the Truman Show, it presents them as scripted moments of a reality TV show. And I think that's why people started having this delusion, this Truman delusion. And it affected me too, because there'd be these moments in my life, I don't know if it happened in yours as well, where, especially this has happened to me on many occasions, where I'll start to get into something. And then for some reason or another, like whether it's a Muay Thai gym or something that interests me that is no longer popular, or the Muay Thai gym has to suddenly close down for some reason, just as I was getting into it. And it's like, what are all these obstacles, you know? Or you go on a few dates with a girl, and it seems things seem to be going well, and then she hits you with, "Oh, I can't see you anymore. I'm actually engaged," or something. You know, it's like, oh, okay. Well, what was that all about then? All these little things, and just little daily things too. Like I mentioned earlier, the weird way that traffic lights can really frustrate you. And so this film does a really brilliant job of presenting those little annoyances in life, or those inexplicable things like the sensation of deja vu, and presenting that as, actually, those are scripted moments. Those are specifically, you know, designed to take place at certain parts in your life, so that your life will continue the script that has been written for you by some vague person or persons that you will never be able to identify or interact with. And the delusion is that, you know, people that suffer from this Truman delusion, they end up feeling, you know, like they don't know what's real. If you look on the Wikipedia for the Truman delusion, it talks about a case where a man had to, he flew to New York City to make sure, you know, that the Twin Towers had actually fallen, that they weren't there, because he didn't know if it was just a massive plot device in his life. so yeah, the little things they do to mess with his mind, I just thought it was brilliant. And then the way that those things can also play out in real life, I thought it was really good writing, how they connected it to real life. And then also with the product placement, there's even a scene too where Truman's getting a bit angry with his wife because she gives him this like little 30-second advertisement in the middle of a conversation with him in their kitchen, and even says like, who in God's name are you talking to? Because she was just reading off like copy, advertising copy. But I thought that was really funny too, because again, you know, from someone growing up in the States, and this is happening to Ireland as well, it's happening all over Europe, but in the States it's been around for a long time, just how everything is corporatized. Everything has the logo of some multinational corporation on it. Everything is sponsored by a corporation. You know, here in Europe, for example, stadiums, for the most part, for most of history, they had, you know, the name of something local. Okay, so like a football stadium in Italy is called, you know, Giuseppe Meazza, San Siro, Stadio Olimpico. But in the United States, it's always like, you know, Verizon Field or Vodafone Court or something like that. And in American life in particular, this is a major factor. People are always talking about the latest thing that they've purchased, comparing brands. They're really into the, you know, the materialistic, consumeristic lifestyle. And since the Celtic Tiger, and since Ireland became a wealthy nation, I think this has affected Irish culture as well, where people do talk about fake things. They talk about things that happen on social media. They talk about series instead of real life. They talk about products. They talk about the latest iPhone. When's it coming out? What's better, Android or Apple? And there are times where I felt like I was in a commercial, you know. So I just thought the film was prophetic in that way. I thought it was brilliant in the way that it plays out those scenes and those moments. But yeah, I don't want to, skip too far ahead or get too lost in the thread. Yeah. But I just wanted to comment on those things.
That's the thing with this movie, because you can go off on all sorts of different tangents because there's just so much stuff in there,
Mm-hmm.
But I was reading this. I have this review by a guy called Roger Ebert, who does a lot of reviews for these movies, right? He says on this one, he says, television with its insatiable hunger for material has made celebrities into content, devouring their lives and secrets. If you think the Truman Show is an exaggeration, reflect that Princess Diana lived under similar conditions from the day she became engaged to Charles. And that is so true. And then she tried to break out of that herself. And look what happened to her, So, and as you said as well, Pox, that we are, I find that too when I'm talking with normies out there. They're talking about the latest product or the latest gadget or whatever. And they're not talking about real life or doing something productive or anything. It's quite sad to see,
And this is what made me so frustrated growing up, because I wanted to see the world. I've always had a lot of wanderlust, and I've been able to accomplish that to some degree. I also wanted to leave America and move back to Europe, which I accomplished as well. But my life is quite boring, actually. I'm just an average person, and that can sometimes be annoying, because I think I do want to enjoy life and have full experiences, and I do have that, like I said, that wanderlust and that that Faustian spirit, which is difficult to live out in modernity. And there were times in my teenage years where I was quite a loner and my life was quite boring, and I was thinking, if someone is filming my life, if this is all scripted, they're doing a really piss poor job, because nothing happens.
Yeah.
So it's. Most people have
scripted, and if it is a TV show, who's watching it?
Yeah, who's? But then it's the same thing that I think about watching, Big Brother. Why?
Yeah.
Who's interested in this?
I know. I remember when that came out. I had absolutely no interest in whatsoever. I said, who would want to spend hours staying up all night watching this shite? Because that's all.
And that's the harsh realization, is that most of us live pretty bang average lives. There's not too much going on. And we are all kind of, it's that what Orwell wrote in 1984, our horizons, or he says there, because he's referring to the masses, their horizons were full only of beer, football, and above all gambling, and therefore they were easy to control, which goes back to the bread and circuses thing. But that really is what people talk about and what interests them. But again, I think it's because modernity has sucked the life out of us. We can't regale each other with thrilling stories about, the hunt, or we've completely throughout the West demonized combat sports or physical contact sports for boys. We've made boys basically are just defunct girls in the eyes of the education system. And so, for most people's life, it's get up, go to work, go back home, see what's on the telly, and talk about that. Yeah. And that's boring. And I think that kind of is this slow burn. It's like setting the cooker onto like level 1 flame. It's just this slow burning desperation, boredom that we all feel, and it's making us all very anxious. And that's why, connecting it to COVID, as Ognir's been doing, I think that's why, particularly at the beginning of COVID, everyone was so gung-ho to comply, because finally something happened. And finally we could all do something together. It also spoke to the need we have for collectivity, community, and we always got this sensation that we're in this together. We can all do our part. Okay, there's something going on. It's our generation's crisis, and we can finally, because before that, people are just being very humdrum. So yeah, I think that's what was really something that struck with me as I watched this film many times growing up. Was just thinking, if this is possible, and if they're doing it to me, why is my life so boring?
Yeah, just going back to the movie when you were talking about the wife, or was it you or Ognir? And they were talking, and she says, "Oh, I'll make you some coffee, mocha cocoa or something, made from beans growing on the slopes of Mount Nicaragua." Isn't that right?
She's talking about all the different. She's holding up. Btwixt mentioned how it's in the style of a 1950s advert, and she holds it up to the camera perfectly so that the label is showing.
Oh, nice white beats and everything. Yeah, it's all.
She mentions the brand. She makes sure to mention the brand by name, and then Truman is just so struck by it that he even says, "Who in God's name are you talking to?"
Yeah, Btwixt, over to you.
You caught me laughing there. Yeah, I think that's a classic scene. I was going to say, you guys already mentioned it, the scene where he follows her to the hospital. She says that they've got to do surgery on one of the poor unfortunates who was injured by the wonky elevator. Well, she goes off on her bicycle, and then I think he grabs a bicycle and he follows her. And obviously, the people in the quote unquote hospital, they know he's coming. So you have this nurse or whatever, she's the first line of defense, and as he's walking down the corridor, she stops him and says, sorry, you can't come in here, you can't. And he tries to tell her that he needs to get by, and she's like, I'm sorry, you can't. And then he pretends that he's walking away, and she disappears, and then he runs to the operating theater. He's just outside it. And I just think it's a great scene because the medical professionals,
oops, did we lose?
We seem to have lost the audio there.
All right. He dropped.
Yeah, but I mean, even that scene at the hospital when he's trying to find the operating room to see if his wife is really in surgery because this girl getting her leg amputated. That you see this, you see all the people in wheelchairs trying to block his path, and he's has to move people out of the way and get there.
Like, thinking about this movie, right? Have any of you guys ever heard of an Irish writer by the name of Flann O'Brien?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
No. Well, he wrote a book called Swim Two Birds, which is described as a book about a book about a book. And, when you think of it, like, well, what the hell, a book about a book about a book. So there's 3 layers to it, and that's what this film is. It's a movie about a movie about a movie. So it's us looking at it. Then you got the people in the bar and the guy in the bathtub and whatever looking at Truman, and Truman's living in his own movie. So it's 3 layers there. And that's where it gets very kind of quite deep, you know. And is there another movie beyond that we're being looked at? You know, we're in a film script. Then you have to wonder about the people who are in the bar watching this. What lives do they have? Do they have a Truman Show? Are they in a Truman Show of their own as well? Because they all seem to be kind of quite happy. You know, they go to the bar and they have a few beers, watch the Truman Show, and it's all pretty good. So what's your take on that side of things? Anyone want to take that one?
Well, I'll just say that's definitely true as well. I mean, and then it's another situation that makes us ask, you know, it's like a chicken and the egg. Is the interest in Truman's life organic, or is it because that's what's on the television? That's what this, you know, this film studio has made. It's the same with reality television. You know, are we as the audience really interested in these shows, or are we being conditioned to be interested in them because that's what's on, and then that's what's talked about on the television the next day on the talk shows and the chat shows, and it's on the front page of the tabloids. You know, just today I saw a university professor was giving some sort of a lecture, and he was using PowerPoint slides to do it. And at one moment of the presentation, he brings up a picture of Yuri Gagarin. And he says something like, if you know the name of all 5 Kardashians, but you don't know the name of the man who basically was the first man to do this, strapped himself to a rocket, launched himself into space, and came back to Earth and lived. If you don't know his name, but you know the 5 Kardashians' names, you're not a bad person, but maybe you want to evaluate yourself and the media you consume. And I thought, okay, that's fine. That's a good point, I guess. You know, I'm all in favor of people knowing more about Yuri Gagarin than the Kardashians. But at the same time, can you blame them? Mm-hmm. The Kardashians are everywhere. Now, I don't know all the names of them, but I know the famous one. I'm not sure why she's famous. I don't know why any of them are famous.
She's got a big
they are. And they're everywhere. Yeah. Yuri Gagarin, he's not anywhere. So it's another thing again too. Is like, okay, we're conditioned to know who the Kardashians are. And as the professor was saying, you know, you might want to reevaluate the media you consume. Okay, sure, but it's not like it's very easy to go in and start. You have to be interested in space exploration and things like that to find yourself, you know, introduced to characters from history of space exploration. It's not like these people are being promoted everywhere, and that's again going back to how we are controlled by propaganda, and how scripts can be written so easily, especially nowadays. Just so easy to get a narrative set and get everyone important to march in lockstep to that narrative. Definitely.
Yeah, and there was another scene as well, which we kind of missed, which was before Truman and the wife cross the bridge and they go through the forest fire and the nuclear meltdown and all that. When he was trying to get on a bus to go to Chicago, and he goes, you have all the actors, and then a young girl then just jumps out of the seat. Isn't that? And he says Truman, you know, and I'm like, oh, the woman goes, oh, shh. So he sits down anyway, and the black guy who's the driver of the bus starts it up, and of course he's an actor, he doesn't know how to drive a bus, right? So he's like, shit, how do I do this? And he just revs the hell out of it, cranks the gears and the clutch and whatever, and the bus breaks down, you know. And the guy, you know, the garage manager comes in and says, sorry, folks, we got a problem, you have to get off, can't go anywhere today. Truman's just sitting there at the back of the bus, and the driver just kind of gets up and looks at him and says, realizes what's going on a bit and says, sorry about that, sorry, walks off. And then when you think about it, like, and Ognir, you had this situation yourself, like when you were in Switzerland, your poor mother died, unfortunately, during that, and you weren't able to get home, right? Because there was no flights, right?
Yeah.
And that was the same, like with Truman. He couldn't get out of Sea Haven to go to Chicago because of a fake, because it was all bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
So again, more correlations with what happened in the last couple of years. It's phenomenal, really, like how this all worked out. And that's why you wonder what kind of reality are we living in here, And I've just come to the conclusion myself that I think most of everything that we've been living through is a fake. I don't particularly believe much of this stuff that's going on. Even we might hear all these school shootings and terrorist bombings and stuff going on. I mean, they could be real. I mean, we're not there, but they could all be all faked as well. I mean, and I know a lot of people have looked into whether these things are fake. So,
yeah,
you
so
have
to
kind
wag the
of
dog
take a
as
step
well.
back, just be at least be skeptical about it,
We all know people. We all know people in our own lives that you're talking about anything and say, "Oh, I saw it on the television." So if it's on the television, it has to be right. It has to be true.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Yeah.
And this is just going to get worse with AI, and now people are doing more with deep fakes and
I know, yeah.
audio recordings, and you can do an AI voice recording that sounds exactly like this famous person's voice, but make them say something totally that they've never said, and now you can even sync it to their image, and you can get this really well done AI imagery where even the head and the mouth movements are synchronized to the speech that has been encoded into this clip that someone has made. The other day, just before I got nuked off Twitter, there was this really interesting case of someone using an AI composite image to pass himself off as a based boomer because he wanted to do this sort of experiment to see if he could get boomers to think in a more, based and red-pilled kind of way. But it was, it was fake. He was faking it, and it took some internet sleuths to find it out. So this is only going to get worse. And it brings to mind the film Wag the Dog, which is another sort of, I guess, predictive programming. Another great example of, this fake reality. And again, I kind of spoke about this earlier. Films like The Truman Show and The Matrix, they present us with a very terrifying challenge, really. I mean, again, people in real life suffer from a syndrome, a delusion, the Truman syndrome. It's really quite bad. These people are, tormented, really. And I remember even feeling that way growing up, and I felt like this could be real, and this could be possible, that they're just, life is scripted, and there's cameras behind mirrors, and they're watching me. That's not a very good feeling, especially when you're a young kid and you really don't quite know as much as you should know, perhaps. And these films, like I said earlier, he has to conquer his fears and go out to sea, and he has to, in a sort of Nietzschean way, confront God. And when you realize, I think all three of you will agree, we've realized a lot of things over the past 3 years. I thought I was pretty, based and on most things, but even I have had to learn new things. I've had some fundamental ideas challenged about the masses, the power of mass media, the malleability of the population. And then I think also this has caused people to swing rather far to another side where now everything is fake. Everything is now being questioned by the sort of conspiracy side of the internet. People who are aware of the COVID scamdemic, amongst those ranks are people who believe that lots of other things are also scams. And if you take that far enough, then it's like, you know, they've deconstructed everything. Everything was faked. Everything was a scam, and that's terrifying. That can really rock your worldview.
Yeah.
And I think that is also why a lot of people shy away from this, because it's not a comfortable thing to have your entire worldview completely besieged by new information and challenging information.
Exactly, and that's like what Truman taught. He was living in this world which was idyllic, and it was nice, it was pleasant, it was fine, you know. And then he started figuring stuff out, and he needed to move away from that and move away from this idyllic lifestyle to figure out exactly what's going on, you know, and realizes that he was living in a fake world. I mean, guys, going back to like media fakery, did you see that picture of Biden, like when he was in Ireland and he's scratching the back of his neck? It looked like a freaking mask. But then I'm thinking, are they playing another trick on us here? Because people will notice that and say, "Oh, it's all fake," right? But it mightn't be. They might have just put that out there just to get us going, you know.
Yeah, or his ears. The way his ears have changed all the time.
Yeah.
And then another thing too is you ask, well, then what's the point? What are they doing? Is it a body double, or is it something more nefarious? It just seems like, and then of course, like you said,
just to get people's attention. They need to get people's attention on stuff.
Maybe, yeah, because like you said too, it's like, do they think we won't notice? A lot of this happened over COVID too. A lot of symbolism, a lot of numerology. Which they must know that a lot of people are wising up to, if they hadn't already been wise to these things. Do you remember, like, one of the first people who got the jab in Britain was called Shakespeare? He ended up dying very shortly afterwards.
All the world's at stage, huh?
Yeah, exactly. The first woman, I believe, in Britain who got the jab, she was wheeled out on a wheelchair, but she had the next day's paper already in her lap, and she's on the front page. That was kind of strange. A lot of other things too. And then when you take it all in as a whole, it's like, what are they doing? Some of it's like minor things, some of it's quite influential and momentous things. It just all serves this purpose of making you really tense and anxious and doubtful of the reality of everything.
It's keeping us from being our true selves of what we want to achieve and what we want to do. But all these obstacles are throwing in at us. They're throwing everything at us, and we just have to find our way through this jungle of nonsense.
Right, and it's like what happens to Truman in the film. He starts to lose his mind. He starts to get very tense and anxious. You know, when he tells his wife in the car, "Look, it's a loop. The pedestrian, the little Volkswagen." You know, at first he does sort of notice the oddities, but because they're so minor, he can't, you know, question further. And then once he starts to notice more, it actually makes him go insane a bit. I thought that's very realistic. That's a very realistic portrayal of what happens when your reality starts to show cracks.
That's it. Btwixt.
It's also part of the mass psychosis that went on during the COVID thing. I mean, people haven't recovered from it. They put everything in our way, try to keep people at home. I remember one of the first things I saw during COVID was a meme with Rothschild on it, and he's kind of in an English bar with I presume an English guy having a few beer, big beer belly on him, and the guy says to Rothschild, he said, "But sure, Rothschild he said, should we be in the pub for a few nights and we'll figure out that this is a scam?" And Rothschild said to him, "Do you believe I'm going to keep the bars open?" So no, it was part of psychosis that we were put on planet-wide scale. That all these obstacles to put in our way. That you couldn't go see your nan. You couldn't do this. You couldn't go in Ireland. You couldn't go 2 kilometers away. A test run to see how far they could go. And the Truman, actually, the more and more I think of it, I mean, I wasn't thinking of that particularly when I re-looked at it today, but everything's scripted, and how far would you go before you say, okay, enough is enough? I think that's the most important question, was which Truman realized when coming towards the end of the movie, that he has to break free. He has to get out of here. And I mean, even when he got out, he drove out of the city, drove out of the town with his wife through the forest fires and the nuclear meltdown. When he got to the nuclear site, the cop said to him, no, you can't get around. He says to the cop, is there any way of driving around? He said, no, it's the only way of going there. He said, okay, thank you. And he said, no problem, Truman. And he said, oh, Truman, he knew his name. I mean, how far would you go to not understand?
Yeah, exactly. So he clicked, you know, but most people sadly wouldn't even cop onto that, because there's cognitive dissonance that goes on in the world at the moment. You can show this, you can present evidence to people that this COVID thing, for example, which is the best example at the moment, that this was a gigantic hoax, right? But people just still believe it, and you can show them, look, you know, the evidence, there's all sorts of things you can show them, and they still can't get it, you know. So they like living in Sea Haven, right? They have their little world there, and they don't want to move.
We are in the world now. People born with penises can have periods and babies, and they're trying to push this totalitarian nonsense on us that we have to accept. You know, that biological males can have periods. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, they're just seeing how far they can push, whether it's Truman or push our societies. Look at the new hate laws being passed in Ireland that they can get you, even if you have, you know, a certain meme on your phone, and they say, oh, that's hateful, they can pull you on it. I mean, Ireland's gone completely gone. But I've been saying that to people. Ireland, we lost our independence. We only got it. We hadn't even have our independence barely a century. We lost it in 2009, 2010 when the EU bailed us out, and we haven't had a government. So they're just, you know, seeing how far they'll push us and push us and push us and push us. But you know.
Well, we never really had our independence even back to 1922. Yeah. That's another story, but we won't go there now. But you know, again, it's just one psyop after the next. It's just continuous, you know. Btwixt, let's bring you in here. You haven't said much there. What's your take? What's been said?
Am I coming in loud and clear?
You are now. We can hear you good.
Excellent. Right. No, I was just saying that you know, when he decides to follow his wife says she's going to operate on one of the victims from the elevator accident, and she goes off on her bicycle. He follows her on a bicycle, and obviously the actors and the extras, they've been informed of this. Truman's on his way to the quote unquote the hospital, and there's a first line of defense, and that's I think a nurse in the corridor, and she tells him, you can't come in here, you can't come in here. And he then says, oh, just tell my wife, you know, that I'm thinking of going to Fiji or whatever. And she drops her guard and she walks away, and then he runs and he gets to just outside the operating theater. And this is where we see, you know, medical professionals who are in no way professional, and they know that Truman is watching them through the window, and therefore, for the first time in their lives, they have to pretend that they're operating. And I think the patient is obviously conscious. He wasn't expecting to be operated on, and the doctor says, "Okay, I just need to make an incision here or whatever," and he cuts the patient. And I don't know. I think maybe he draws blood, but this is the idea. You know, they're willing to cause pain to someone and to draw blood in order to keep the series running. Everything is about keeping the Truman Show on the air. And, you know, this kind of harks back to the whole idea of medical professionals, prior to COVID, you know, most people, you know, almost 100% of people had, you know, they held doctors and nurses in high esteem. A lot of that, you know, obviously you still have a majority of people who still do, but there's a sizable minority now who, you know, they don't think that the doctor's opinion is gospel. And it kind of reminded me, I went to a dentist that's a good few years ago, and I had a really bad toothache. It was from getting a wisdom tooth extracted, and the tooth beside it became infected a few months later. and it was causing me incredible pain, pulsing pain that lasted days and days and days. And eventually, it has to be really bad for me to go to a dentist. And I went to a dentist, and the woman, it was a consultation, and she took an X-ray, and for all I know, she could have just put a black marker, little line or little smudge here, to make it look like it was a visual representation of my pain. She was like, "Oh, you can see there's a little crack here on that tooth. Yes, that tooth. Yes, it should be extracted." And 2 weeks later, I went then to get it extracted, and she was there, and the dentist, the real dentist, was there, and she had told the dentist to extract a tooth that was on the other side of my mouth. And she said, "Yeah, just extract a tooth on this side of the mouth." She touched my mouth, and I was lying back on the chair. I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "You told me you're going to extract the tooth on the other side where the pain is." And she was like, "Oh, yes, sorry, my mistake." So, these people make mistakes, and they make horrendous mistakes. They're not know-it-alls, as we've been led to believe. So there's also this theme in the Truman Show of the matriarchy. And if you notice, apart from his best mate, Truman is surrounded by women. There's his mother and there's his wife. And when Truman is starting to question everything, his wife and his mother team up like an intervention. And one night they have this, looking at photos when he was a kid, and he's sandwiched between them, and he's wearing, a kind of real sissy jumper. And he's bored out of his brain, and they're looking over, "Oh, look at him, he's so cute. And, this was when he did this, and this is when we visited this." And he's completely, distraught, having to sit through this when he's questioning his very existence, his identity, his whole environment. And here he is sandwiched between these two women who are talking about photos, photos.
Yeah,
and there is another thing then as well. And you have to think that these two women, they're paid actresses. They must put on the best performance they can, because as I said earlier, if Truman walks out of this show, if he can somehow leave the dome, they're going to lose their paychecks. Obviously, they're very lucrative paychecks. They're going to lose those paychecks, and they might find it hard to find work elsewhere. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. Now there is a part of the script. Pox mentioned earlier about obstacles. In this film, you constantly get obstacles popping up. And there's a part of this is going way back, where he's starting to have this crisis. And he's been out, and he arrives home, and his wife is there to meet him. And his wife, Meryl, says, "Where have you been?" And Truman, "I've been thinking." And Meryl, rolling her eyes, "Oh, God." So the very idea that Truman would be able to think independently is a threat to everyone on the set. And Truman continues, "I figure we could scrape together 8,000. And I think this is, his idea to travel. And she's shocked. She says, "Every time you and Marilyn," and then Truman says, "we could bum around the world for a year on that." And then Meryl says, "And then what, Truman? We'd be back to where we were 5 years ago. You're talking like a teenager." Truman says, "Maybe I feel like a teenager." And Meryl says, "We're mortgaged to the eyeballs, Truman. Yes. There's the car payments. Are we just going to walk away from our financial obligations?"
Yes, absolutely. There it is. And that's what most people are concerned about these days. The mortgage payments, the car payments, the bills,
It's control.
It is real control, isn't it? That's where they have it.
During COVID, they did the same. If you didn't play along, you get, if you didn't get vaccinated, you get fired. Now you see all over the world. Thank God for that. That all the people that were fired are getting their jobs back. I've seen that in France and the US. I'm not so sure about Ireland, but lots of places are having to rehire. I mean, it was nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay. So we're at that stage.
We forgot one little bit, which is important.
Take it up. Yeah.
When Truman has noticed some odd things. He's driving back into town, and every time you see him in the car, there's a little camera kind of looking up at him, and you get the impression, which is correct, that the guy on the radio is talking directly. He can see Truman, and he's talking directly to him. But all of a sudden, there's another one of these glitches in the Matrix. And all of a sudden, instead of listening to this radio when they play these soft music, and the guy come on talk and play some soft music just for Truman, the frequency for the internal, for the earpieces comes on the radio, and he can hear people talking on this frequency, which is the radio cut off, about he's turning now on the next street, he's turning now, he's going there, and he still, he still hasn't about it because he's a simpleton. He didn't figure it out yet. And then all of a sudden, boom, the radio's back, and now to keep you happy, a little bit of soft music, calm you down.
Have you noticed as well that the music they play is always classical music? There's Mozart, Beethoven, they play a lot of classical music in it, which is interesting. Pox, what's your take on that? Why they could have played rock and roll or whatever, what we hear most movies, but it was all very, very nice classical music was played throughout this film.
Yeah, particularly at the beginning, as the film introduces us to its world, they play Mozart. I don't know the actual number of that particular composition, but it's quite whimsical. It adds a bit of whimsy to it. So I think that was probably one of the reasons they went with that. You're right.
I think because classical music is true music. It's the real music. Right? Mm-hmm. Like what we have now is a bastardized version of what we call music.
Mm-hmm. So. And it's true. Like and now I don't remember though if it's he who puts on the music of his car radio or if that's the film's soundtrack. But I think actually, if I remember correctly, he turns on the car radio and Mozart comes out, and then he changes the channel to the AM station, the talk radio station. But then the music continues as now the film's backdrop music for those scenes, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting choice that they used a lot of classical music.
So now we're coming to the where it gets kind of very interesting, where he does realize that something's very wrong here, and he needs to get the hell out of here. And so he pretends to go to bed in the basement. The guys in the studio are just saying they're eating pizza and just kind of laying back. He's gone to bed. So this is a quiet moment. There's time off for them now,
Well, I'm not so sure if I figured out what happened here at this scene, just before this scene. So what happened just prior to this was they wrote his wife out of it. She left him. Remember when Christoph was being interviewed, they said, there's going to be a new romantic involvement now. His wife's going to leave him. And then, of course, then there's a scene in the office when his colleague introduces him to this very pretty girl and says, this is Heidi or whatever, who's going to be your new colleague here, and you can be working with her, and she's, of course, very good looking. And he's going, oh, wow, yeah, she's nice. Now that we don't see that develop, but and we don't even see his wife actually leaving him. We don't see that bit either. But I think at that stage he does know that this is all bullshit, and he needs to get the hell out of here. And of course he has to conquer this fear. And again, that's another thing, we brought this up before, the fear of leaving Sea Haven because it's so perfect. Why would you want to go anywhere else? And that's a big bad world out there, Truman. You'd only go in there. Imagine you get on a plane and a lightning strikes through the wing. I mean, you could be on that plane. Yeah, so, it seems to be this at this stage of the movie that he's got over his cognitive dissonance, and because he's so, as you said, he's what we see every so often is the people up in the fake moon now, which is badly placed in the movie. They made some mistakes about that, but you see the control room, and during the night normally he's sleeping. So he's down. So his wife has left. It's a certain time has passed. We don't know how long that is, but obviously not too long. And the cameras everywhere, and they can hear everything. And so the two guys up in the control room, it's the night team, are looking on. They can hear snoring, so they think it's normal. And then Christoph comes in during the night shift, and he comes in, there's something bothering him, and he said, no, I was going to call you, but he's what's he doing, sleeping downstairs? He just started doing that recently. But this is the time that he knows he's under surveillance, and he's planning a getaway plan, but he has to get by the security. All the surveillance, although he doesn't know that there are 5,000 cameras in Sea Haven. He doesn't know that. We know that because of Christoph from his TV view. So what he did was quite good. He put down some sort of not a doll, I don't know, some sort of a fake body that made a noise of snoring. Now, they didn't realize this. So we're seeing it from the control room, and Christoph is getting a bit worried. So he wants to get me another camera view, get me his best Marlowe, send Marlowe over. So it's in the middle of the night.
Get the sound up. We want to see where that sound is coming, where that snoring's coming from, and everything,
Yeah, and they have total controls.
Yeah.
Over the scene. So in the middle of the night, they send over Marlowe to see what's going on. But as Marlowe is coming into the home, he's also hearing voices in his ear from Christoph telling him what to do and what to say. Hello, are you in here? And all of this. And he goes downstairs and he discovers the deception. And now we're getting towards the kind of final scene, that there's a mad rush to find him. So I'll pass it over to the boys.
Yeah, there's another scene there as well where the cameras lock in under. He says, "Look under that table there, that chair," and there's a hand. Now, is that Truman's hand or what? I couldn't quite get that one. But that's when he realized that Truman pulled a fast one on them and he got out. Does anyone want to take that one up? Do you remember that scene?
I didn't pay too much. Probably was.
Remember they were when he thought he was in bed sleeping, and Marlon comes down, realizes there's just a big balloon under the bed with a tape recorder underneath it, snoring. But then he says, "Focus in under that chair." And you look at it and you see a hand, and you're wondering, is that Truman's hand? I couldn't quite get the meaning of that one. I don't know if anyone else noticed that one.
I'll spot that the next time.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that it's his plan to be able to leave Sea Haven. This is how he manages to get on the sailboat and get onto the water. Isn't it? It's a mannequin's hand at the end, no?
Oh, it could be a mannequin's hand. I don't know whether it was his hand or a mannequin's hand. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And yeah. But why put that in? I was thinking, what was the meaning of that? I couldn't quite work that one out. But
maybe to give them a little something that looks human, so it's not just the sound of his voice, and maybe if he's getting quite clever at this point. So there's no breathing, there's no up and down movement of like a chest cavity. So to give the appearance of a human somewhere on that. Underneath those blankets, he gives them a little glimpse of a hand, and I think he knows now at this point that it's just to buy him some time. Mm-hmm. There's so many cameras everywhere.
He's distracting. He's figured out he's being filmed, so he's different. So,
or even if he's not aware that he's being filmed, he's aware that he's being watched. He's aware that his life is being watched, curated, monitored, controlled, redirected every time he wants to do something. Mm-hmm. So in any case now, whether it's cameras or whatever, I need a little bit of time to just give myself some freedom to do this thing that I want to do, which is get a boat onto the water.
Yeah, so he turned the tables on them then and threw in obstacles and distractions for them to buy that time,
There is a scene where it all comes crashing down. You know, he really realizes that it's all a charade, and that's with his wife. Now, maybe I don't know if you guys mentioned this already because I disappeared for a few minutes, but it's a scene with his wife Meryl in the kitchen, and they're having an argument, and Meryl grabs the chef's mate from the counter, right? And she points. It's a potato peeler. She points it at him, and she says, "Truman, you're scaring me," because I think he's grabbed her wrist or something, and Truman says, "No, you're scaring me, Meryl." And then he says, "Stop this now! I'll do it. I swear." And this is where he's going out of his mind. And she suddenly shouts, "Do something!"
Yeah, do something. Yeah.
So she's calling out for help from the staff, of the TV show, and that's when suddenly everything just becomes clear in his mind. He says to her, "Who were you talking to?" And she's incredulous. She says, "You're the one talking to the walls." And he says, "No, you said do something. Who were you talking to? Tell me." And then she says, "Truman, stop it." And this is where they try to tell Truman, you're not well. The whole film is about gaslighting Truman, but here they tell him, you're not well. You probably need to go on medication. And if this were back a few decades, previous, they tell him, that he needs to get electroshock therapy. He's just off the radar here completely.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, he gets out of his house, and a search party. It's all hands on deck now. So they have to pull the Truman Show off the air, right? And everyone's wondering what the hell's going on, because emergency situation here. We have to figure this out. We got to find Truman. They're all walking around the film set, which is Sea Haven, trying to find him, and still trying to pull him back. "Oh, Truman, we love you. Come back to us. We didn't mean it. Whatever, come on. It's all good." But he's off. Obviously, got his boat and he's on the sea now. And the next thing is that we do see him. He's on the boat, and they do have the camera on the boat. And there he's sailing away anyway, and the sun is shining, the wind is blowing in his hair, and it's all good. And he's happy. He's going somewhere. He knows he has to get out of Sea Haven. He just knows it doesn't matter where the fuck he's going. He has to get out of here because this is bullshit. So he realizes that, and that's pretty amazing, because for a lot of us who have woken up to the bullshit that's happening, we have to take that road. We have to take that road wherever it brings us, but just get us out of this fucking shit, because that's where we are now. And that's where I am. I feel like this is, particularly after the last 3 years, whatever, that we had to go through. I really do not want to be involved with this too much. I'm stepping away, I think you guys will probably feel the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then he's on the boat, and they said, "Okay, right, we got him now." And then they plug it back in again. The show comes back on live, and everyone's, "Oh my God!" Everyone in the bar, the guy in the bathtub, the two guys in the garage who are, eating pizza and everything. The two old ladies. There's a couple of Chinese couple there. "Oh yeah, Truman back on show again," and everyone is tuned back in. And he says, "Right, we might have to kill him here. Is the Truman Show coming to an end, right?" So where do you want to take from here? Because this is where it gets very, very interesting. So, Pox, you take it away from here.
Yeah, well, this is the climax. This is the sort of Nietzschean, Faustian thing that I've been talking about, where and as you said just there, you want to detach from all this. You want to, especially after what's been done over the past 3 years and what we know is coming. A lot of people on our side of things have decided that they want to detach from this, but that's a very big ask. It's not easy to do. And one of the reasons why it's not easy to do is because you have to sacrifice a lot of knowns. You have to sacrifice a lot of comfort and conveniences. You might have to give up a really good job and health insurance and all sorts of things if you want to go off and create a parallel society or live off the grid or just not have to use these invasive technological systems that are being imposed on you, or if you want to detach yourself from supply lines that are not only being weakened, but it seems to be that they are being corralled into intentional failure with food production and things like this. So it's very intimidating. It's very dangerous. But that's what Truman has to do if he wants to find the truth and if he wants to be able to live like a true man. Mm-hmm. And so he gets on the boat, a very small boat, and he takes on God. He takes on God. I'm not. I've had talking about finding the truth and being exposed to uncomfortable realities that confront your worldview. My view on Christianity has changed quite a bit over the past 2 years. And part of why I examined Christianity was because I had a lot of free time over the past 2 years with the lockdown and everything to observe what was going on and see how things were playing out. But anyway, so I don't mean any offense though, but I do believe that he takes on God in this scene, and it's very Nietzschean, it's very Promethean, it's very Faustian. He is this little humble man who's been traumatized and controlled and, as Btwixt said earlier, kind of stunted, but now he is going to become Ubermensch. He's going to. Yeah. Sorry?
He's come of age.
Yeah, he's come of age, and he's going to take on this all-powerful figure, really. I mean, Christoph even says at one point, because what they do is they using the special effects, they make the water become very choppy. They turn on all the sprinklers. They have it's a very high tech, sort of almost futuristic. Again, this film was made in the late 90s, so some of it might be fictitious technology. Well, maybe not really. They have geoengineering technology inside of this giant dome, which is the studio. The dome is visible from space. It's massive. So they have a lot of technology at their disposal, and so they use it to create a storm. And the waves are getting stronger and higher, and it's raining, it's thrashing, and everyone around Christoph in the control room, I guess you could call it, they start to get very concerned. Are we going to kill him? And Christoph even says, hit him harder, lightning, hit him harder.
The ultimate challenge for him.
Yeah.
Throw it all at him and see how he does.
Yeah, exactly. And Btwixt mentioned how really Truman is a commodity. He belongs to the studio.
He even said that. Remember, he was interviewed by the guy that you're the first corporation that legally owns this man.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's another sidetrack as well. Isn't that the way corporations are now saying that we legally own you?
And actually, that's the way British law sees you. If you go to court, you represent yourself. You're not actually you. Yeah. In a legal document or in a court of law, all these contracts, they are actually, you're not you. You represent, or someone represents you. It's not actually you. We think we are. This is why the past 3 years have been so illuminating. We thought we were so free in the West, and it turns out it was all a fantasy. And now what's happening is that people like us are waking up to just how big is the scale of this fantasy and everything that we're up against. And so Christoph could legally, end Truman's life here and the show, because it's well within his rights as the director, producer, creator, if you will. And so it's just such a powerful moment, and you can't help but cheer for Truman. as the scenes cut to the audience, the viewers in the real world outside the studio, living in the real world, even they start changing as well. Whereas before, over the course of the film, they're just passively watching the television, passively watching the program. And this is a program that they probably watched without fail every day. And yet now in these final scenes, they are actually cheering for Truman to break free and end the show, really effectively end the show and end their favorite program. But because it's such a moment of, again, just pure humanity, the desire for freedom, the desire to live on his own terms, he's taking on the forces of nature, he's taking on otherworldly powers, basically, and so you can't help but cheer for this this heroic man, and they do really, really moving stuff.
Yeah, Btwixt.
Yeah, so I'll get to that scene. I was going to just go back and say, you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah, bring up whatever. If you
you mentioned
here, just bring up other stuff, and because it all ties in anyway,
Yeah,
So
fair enough. So you mentioned earlier Big Brother, and you were saying that you thought it was absolute shite, and you never really bothered watching it. And I often wondered, what was the fascination with this show? And then I came to the conclusion that it was completely astroturf. Nobody initially had any interest in reality TV. But what they did was they used total propaganda. So on TV, on different channels, they would talk about what had happened on Big Brother. On the radio, they were constantly talking about Big Brother. So if you're driving to work, you're hearing the radio presenters in the morning saying, "Oh my God, if you missed it, that's such a pity because Big Brother was great last night." And then someone else, on the show would say, "Yes, it was just the best." And then you go into your office and the radio's on in your office and you've got different radio presenters saying, "Oh, Big Brother, what a show," And this is what garnered people's interest, the fact that everyone was talking about it on all the different media. But I remember, I mentioned this on previous streams, but I remember, I was in a pub one night, and this is going back to 2002, and I was out drinking with a friend, and the TV was on. It was some guy, he was on an exercise bicycle, some bald-headed guy or shaven-headed guy. He was on an exercise bicycle. Looked like he was in a little gym. And it was just him on an exercise bicycle. And it was kind of dark as well. And I said to my friend, what is this? And he said, "Oh, that's Big Brother." And I said, "This is Big Brother?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "All right." So getting back to the scene that you and Pox have spoken about, where Christoph has, he has his finger on the button. Shall I kill Truman, or shall I let him live, or what shall I do? The two guys that are beside him, one of whom is trying to save Truman's life. Those two characters are called Moses and Roman. So I just thought that was interesting as well. The idea of the parting of the Red Sea and all that. And we mentioned last week, we were talking about that woman in V for Vendetta, where she's being interrogated, or so she believes. And she believes she's going to be brought out behind the sheds and shot because she's taken a stance or a vow of silence, And then, the official, who's, not really an official, he tells her that she can go because she no longer fears death. She no longer fears the system. And I think that is a lesson for everyone, that when you no longer fear death, you can do so much. You can even move mountains. And just when, Pox mentioned when Truman, he's sailing across the sea and he's defying God, he's challenging God. It's like Moby Dick as well. I think it is a Captain Ahab, where he's made a decision, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I'll probably die in the process, but I'm going to try. All I can do is try.
That's it. Yeah. Ognir, anything you want to add there as well?
Well, it's Truman doesn't know where he's going. He's just on his boat. It's not stipulated where he's just sailing along.
I think he probably thinks he said, well, I'll head for Fiji and see what happens.
But this is, I wonder if this has the actual structure of the movie, the structure of the set, has fed into the flat Earth movement.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up actually
on the internet, because this is all under a dome. Everything is under a dome. Everything seems realistic.
Yeah.
And he all of a sudden he's come through the storm. Now it was interesting when you had Christoph in the control room and he's giving order, put up the wind, they're going about to kill him, and people are screaming in his ear. But he played I'll go definitely along with Pox, that he was playing the part of the creator. He said, I am the creator of a TV show. But this is when in the final scene, before he actually hits the outside of the dome, and he's just about to get his freedom, that Christoph actually did play the part of God. Now, I think that part that came through quite clear when he defied all his own staff. That's what he was doing. Now we're coming to the very end, and I have it's coming end of it for me. We're going on a long time. I have one question for you all, and you can do the final. I'll give you a minute or two to think about it. What was your favorite line from the movie? Now I have a favorite line, and I bet you none of you will have the same, a line or two, or a scene from the movie. Now, as we get it, he hits the outer shell, and then all of a sudden he's walking up the stairs, and he's listening to the voice of God, Christoph, and he's asking questions. And I let the boys finish the final scene, and then we go back to my question, and I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. What was your favorite scene in the movie? A quick scene, a couple of seconds, and that'll be interesting.
Favorite scene. Let me think about that. Pox, do you want to jump in there? Let me think about
that. So the question was about the conversation he has with Christoph on the stairs, and then the other question was, what's our favorite scenes?
One scene.
I want to come back to that stairs as well, and
finish with the stairs, and then we do my question.
Okay, what I'd say is that let's bring the flat Earth kind of stuff into it, because as you know, he's going along on the sea. But before that, it brings back something I thought about, the Bible story of Jesus on the Sea of Galilee with the apostles, and a big storm comes, and Jesus calms the storm, So no matter what they threw at him, okay, he roped himself in and he survived that storm. And then it all calmed down again, and he came along and he just hit this, you could hear this dunk, right? And he realized there's a wall or something, which was like a fake sky or a fake horizon or whatever. And, when we hear people talk about flat Earth, they talk about where there's a firmament around us. Now, when it comes to flat Earth, guys, I've looked at it. It's interesting. I don't know whether we're on a ball or we're on a flat plane. I don't know, and we'll never know. But it's interesting that they brought that into that, this is before flat Earth even ever took off, long before flat Earth took off. And there was also just a little scene just before we spotted Truman on. Actually, the whole town, the whole set is out looking for him, and Christoph is in the control room, and he says, "It's too dark. Bring up the sun." All of a sudden, in a couple of seconds, the sun comes up and it's all bright, and they have the crew had to cover their eyes. They said, "Well, what time is it? What time is it?" So there was something to that, with the flat Earth. Yeah, and it was being a fake god as well. You could bring the sun up in Truman's world. He could bring that sun up. That the sun just comes up every morning, you know, no matter what. But he could do it. He was able to, in a fake world, he was able to bring up the sun, you know. And then the moon thing as well, because his studio was based allegedly on a moon, which was, by the way, a dome-shaped studio, which is very interesting as well. So, and if you notice as well, there was one point, I don't know this, I think it was about 1 hour, 10 minutes when Truman was allegedly asleep in his bed. If you look at the scene behind the two guys who were eating pizza, it had a flat earth map. Now, they didn't show the continents, but it showed the, you know, Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator, like on a flat earth. It looked like a flat plane, okay? And so there was a lot of flat earth stuff put in there. And then when it came to the point where he hit the firmament, and then Christoph says, Truman, you know, let's talk about this, you know. And, you know, it was like he was talking to God. It was like, it's going back to biblical things again, like where Jesus is on the mountain and the devil tries to tempt him, pull him back and say, it says, oh, this world can all be yours. You can go back to your Truman. It's a wonderful world. Why do you want to leave, you know? It's all here for you. Everything's here for you. And it's funny that these stairs appear, and that brought into mind that Led Zeppelin song, Stairway to Heaven.
Heaven, yeah, absolutely.
You know? Or Jacob's Ladder, you know? And he walks up, and he's standing at the door. And, of course, the big moment was where he was thinking about it. And then when Christoph says, say something, goddammit, you're on television. You're live to the whole world. And that just proved that Christoph didn't give a fuck about Truman. It was about the show. And that's when he decided, I'm out of here. He said, I'm out of here, and walked through that door. Now, where he goes to afterwards, of course, we don't know. But anyway, I'll pass it over. Btwixt, you want to say something there?
I was just going to say, like Ognir was on about, you know, bringing up the sun. Seemingly, that's what the Chinese are doing now. They're bringing up some very bright object that's supposedly 4 times hotter than the sun. Yeah, that final scene is wonderful, and you described it very well, Brizer, where his boat hits the edge of the dome, and then he's touching the sky with his hand. You know, the sky is painted; it's not real, and it's probably I don't know what it's made of, but you know, he then
like a wall or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it seemed wooden, or it even seemed wooden. But he's on a sort of, it's kind of like a footpath, and he starts walking around it, and then you have the stairs. But Christoph, he's a businessman. He needs Truman. He's played the God figure, but it boils down to, I need to keep this guy on the show because it's the Truman Show, and there's a back and forth between them, and it's obviously Truman can't see the creator, but he says, a show, then who am I? And Christoph says, you're the star. So this is Christoph trying to flatter Truman, to make him go back and to embrace the life that Christoph has made for him. And Truman says, nothing was real. And that's the line in the sand. That's where you decide, screw it. I'm out. Screw it. I'm not playing along anymore. You can pretend there's a deadly virus. I no longer give a fuck, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
That's it.
And when he ascends the stairs, he's going into a completely unknown realm, but he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care about what's beyond that door. All he cares about is that he's no longer going to participate in a pretend world. And if that means going into the darkness, well, so be it.
Yeah. And it is dark behind him. You see, it's dark, so we don't know where he's going. And so you have to wonder, what world is he going to? Is he going to heaven? Is that stairway to heaven? Because he was in a place called Sea Haven, which could be Sea Heaven, but it was an artificial heaven. He's going into the real one. Or is he going back into the world where all the people who are sitting in the bar, the guy in the bath and whatever, is he going back into that world, which is just the same pretty much as what Truman was living in? Or where is he going, you know? It's, of course, we don't know.
Well, he's
that.
going, he's coming into his own. He has to choose between authenticity or inauthenticity, and it's not an easy choice, actually, because a lot of people's lives, as I said earlier, are authentically miserable, authentically boring. It's real life, but nothing happens. It's boring. A lot of people, especially in the wake of all these superhero films, people have this thing where it's like another syndrome. It's like main character syndrome. It's cape shit syndrome. They all want to be the main character. Everyone really thinks they are the main character in their own film nowadays. Yeah. And I think this is particularly something that can only affect the modern mind that has grown up with cinema and films, and in a boring world as well, where a lot of your daily activities are sort of scheduled and timetable and curated. People can say all they want about how the country life is boring too, and being a farmer or something, or living in the countryside is boring too, because you don't have Netflix or PlayStation or whatever. Fair enough, but you have an autonomy that you might not have working a 9 to 5 and commuting in traffic and all sorts of other things. Whereas, our more ancient ancestors, okay, they didn't have Netflix and they didn't have PlayStations, but they had autonomy. And Ted Kaczynski writes about this in all of his works as well. You think the car gives you more independence, but really it doesn't, because once you have a car, now you can only go on paved roads and you can only drive at the speed limit that some government entity tells you to drive at. Whereas in the past, if you were just wandering on foot, you can go anywhere you want and you can go at the pace you want. Yeah. So with all of these advances and all these conveniences comes a sacrifice in autonomy, because every new tech and every convenience depends on another one. That's what's so precarious about modernity, is that it all depends on something else. It's all of these interdependent, sophisticated systems. Whereas if just one thing dysfunctions or malfunctions, the whole system can start to wobble. And so at the end of the film, and if you were to ask me what are your favorite scenes, I just love Jim Carrey's performance. I think he's fantastic. It's one of his best performances ever. I love the scene where he tells his friend he wants to go to Fiji, and he explains it to him by saying, here's where we are, and way over here, Fiji. I just love that. That's always stuck with me. Yeah. But I think the end is my favorite. I love the way this film ends. And he has to choose between real life or fake life. It's like in The Matrix as well. And like I said, it's not easy, because authentic life, getting your hands dirty, working manually, authentic life for a lot of human beings throughout the hundreds of thousands of years that we've existed as, humanoid creatures. Authentic life is hunting dangerous animals 3 times your size to get your calories in. I mean, imagine that. Imagine instead of being able to open their fridge and have food, you had to pick up a spear, get the lads together, and go off hunting. And some of your mates died because they got attacked by predators. And I'm not one to say that the past was grim and bleak and colorless. I believe that's all fake and psyop as well. It's actually not true that people in the Middle Ages, for example, all died at the age of 30. It's not true. That's just taking in the average lifespan of everyone, including infant mortality. So when you have like 6 children, 3 of them die as infants, and 3 of them live to be 60 or 70, which is pretty good. Well, then the average is 30 or 40. Okay. But that doesn't mean that everyone was dropping dead at 30 in the 1400s. So I'm not trying to say that, but I am saying that the inauthentic life, or the pursuit of inauthenticity, is also part of, you know, the human condition. We want things to be more convenient. We want things to be done for us. But what happens is that the more we detach ourselves from life, from nature, from the natural order of things, through technology and through convenience, we actually become more frustrated and depressed. And this is the huge threat of technology, and we're on the brink of even more, just crazy advanced technology coming fairly quickly, it seems, that we have no idea the consequences of it. And so at the end, where does he go? Well, I think he chooses real life. I think he reunites with the brunette, whatever her name was, the first love. And that's a really nice theme too, is how really the main thing that makes him want to leave Sea Haven, the main thing that
because of her,
exactly, it's love.
Yeah,
it's first love, and there's nothing more important than that sort of first love.
Yeah.
And you know, he has no idea if he's ever going to see that woman again. He has no idea, but she left an impression on him, and she clearly fell in love with him, although he doesn't know that she's there, you know, in the real world outside of that studio, still in love with him. But we do see that in the end, you know, he walks up the stairs, and the last time we see her is that she's running down the stairs, her building, her house. And so I think the impression is that they are going to find each other.
Yeah.
And so he chooses to come into his own. He chooses to be a real, true man. But what does that mean? Okay, it means, yeah, it might be the same boring life that the people in the bar, in the Truman bar, are living, that the guy in the bathtub is living. But he has autonomy. He has independence. And I think at the end of the day, that's why people nowadays are so uneasy, because we know that we're not actually doing what we want to do or what we should do. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're not living up to your full potential, that you're not doing what you feel like you're meant to do. But then it's really risky and dangerous and not so easy to actually go and do those things. And even more complicated, some of these things are like genetic memory, ancestral, you know, blood memory things. The masculine urge to live in the woods and hunt wild boar, you know, which is not so easy to do nowadays. Nowadays we go to Tesco's, you know. So it's just, I love these films. I love films like this one. I love films like Wag the Dog or The Matrix that get you questioning reality. Absolutely. But then it's also makes you question, well, maybe reality is overrated, and that's the decision Truman has to make. Is it worth it? And he has no idea, actually, really. He has no idea what reality is. Yeah. You know, it's like when Neo takes the red pill. He has no idea that that's going to send him into some submarine in the real world where they're all eating, you know, gloop and wearing these drab clothes and fighting against these insanely powerful enemies. But he takes it anyway. But that's his new authentic life, is eat the gruel, fight the agents, and perhaps, you know, die. Whereas the inauthentic life was good. It was objectively better, but it wasn't real. So that question that these films pose is just, it's amazing. I really love it.
Yeah. And in fact, you know, he walked through that door at the top of the stairs. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew it was better than where he was, you know. And that's going back to Ognir, your question, my favorite part of me. Yeah, it had to be that last, say, 10 minutes. Because it was very profound, you know, and it made, you know, it makes people think about, like, you know, do you want to live in this world where you pay the mortgage, pay your bills? Oh, look, you can buy coffee beans from the slopes of Mount Nicaragua. You know, this is wonderful. Oh, this shite. It's shite. It's fake. It doesn't mean anything.
Like, do you know what I mean? You know, about fake and real. You know, like. Yeah. Have any of you ever been caught, you know, outdoors in the woods under a heavy rainstorm and been totally drenched? Mm-hmm. Have you ever had to sleep in a park on a park bench? Have you ever been poor? Like, you know, have you ever been in danger? Have you ever been in a fight? You know, life is hard. life can be really, really hard. And is that authentic, or is the quest to make life easier still also authentic? Because we are authentically trying to survive, and so we authentically develop, tools and technology to make things easier for us. But what happens with something like the Truman Show is that it's the feeling of not being in control that makes you start questioning authenticity or inauthenticity. It's the feeling of having no control. You're just a sitting duck to the whims of some powers that be very far away from you. This is another problem of global governance, things like the United Nations, the European Union. Why is it that someone in Brussels is making policy decisions for someone in Ireland or someone in northern Italy or something? It's like we don't have any say, and so this is why we have all this anxiety. And I think ultimately the message of these films is that to be a true man means having a say, having control over your own actions. And nowadays that means breaking away from a lot of convenience that has helped us survive as a species and thrive and reach incredible heights. But it also has come at the sacrifice of a lot of autonomy. And I think that's what these films make us question.
Yeah. I think the last 3 years have shown us, because we could have fallen for this bullshit if we didn't know any better. We could have fallen for it. We could have stuck out our arms and got poisoned with an injection. But somehow we knew that this wasn't right. This doesn't make sense, So,
and I just want to say too about the flat Earth thing. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but recently there was maybe this was only here in Spain. Maybe it was a European-wide advertisement campaign, but I think it was Renault cars. They have this this advert where the whole idea is that if you buy this particular SUV, it will take you, off the beaten path to new and unexplored areas. You will see new sights. And so and I believe that in the advert it's a woman driver and a male passenger, so that's some more propaganda there. But anyway, they take this mountain slope upwards. They go up this mountainside in their SUV, and they're passing all the other cars by. All the other cars, all the other SUVs aren't capable of going up as high as this particular SUV. I believe it's Renault. And they go all the way up to the summit, but it's not the summit. In the end, they end up crashing into a wall. The sky is painted. The sky is a wall, and there's these two guys outside painting the clouds on the side of this sky blue wall. So that was a very, very interesting.
I'd say it's all there hidden inside,
And I instantly thought of the Truman Show once I saw that. What are they trying to tell us? What are they playing with us? What's going on?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, how do these people know this shit? Or are they playing with us, or what?
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's just a kind of a simulated reality where we're just the ordinary folk who are just trying to get on and get by and whatever. And then they throw down these challenges at us, they throw down the gauntlet at us and see how we react to different situations, and see who comes out best out of this. And we've come out of this 3 years, and we haven't been tainted. We know the score. And I think that's the reason why, they left us alone, because I didn't do any of this shit. I didn't mask up. I didn't do any social distancing. I had a couple of friends around my house every weekend. We had a few beers every weekend. I was trying to red pill these guys, and they're beginning to see it, But again, they're still kind of stuck in it as well. But it's all a progression, okay? Just I can't hold people's hands. They have to see it for themselves. I had to see it for myself. And like Truman, I've gone through that fucking door, man. I've gone through that door. I don't give a fuck now about what's going on. I don't give a fuck about governments. Even these hate speech laws that are bringing in Ireland now, I don't give a fuck about them. I really don't, because I know how to deal with it. I've learned how to deal with that stuff because I've studied law and I know what it's all about and how I can navigate my way through this shit. And that's what it's about, And we're all going to depart this mortal coil at some point. Now, where we go afterwards, I don't know. Are we going through the door like Truman goes? Are we going to a better place? Who knows? But, you know, I don't want to be a part of what we're in at the moment, because it is all pretty much fake. It's very disturbing as well, a lot of stuff that's happening. And I don't want to be in that energy. I've moved away from it, and I'm just trying to do my own fucking shit, and that's it. And I'm finding when I've done that, I've been left alone, you know, I've been left alone. And it's a great place to be, because you feel liberated, you feel that you're in charge. As you said, I'm in charge of my own destiny. And wherever it goes from here, I'll find it, you know, one day at a time. Wherever it leads, I'm going, or I'm on that road, you know, and I'm ready to take on any challenge that comes along now, because I know how to deal with it, because I realize it's all bullshit, pretty much.
Yeah. It's like the thing where you often don't regret the things you've done. You regret most the things you didn't do. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it might be a bit scary and intimidating and confusing to admit that your worldview is wrong, and it might be daunting to try and distance yourself from a system that is all controlling, all consuming, and fake. You know, it's I think it's the inauthenticity of everything right now, whether it's transgenderism, making you know, fake men and women who are fake. You know, you have to.
It's all fake. Yeah.
Exactly, it's all fake. Where we got Bill Gates and the fake meat, fake food. Already, our food is mostly fake. The lack of nutrients in food today, compared to before, our soil was so tainted all across the continents, through, you know, battery farming practices, factory farming, mass chemical fertilization, all that sort of thing. Or, you know, the nutrients in a carrot or a potato, or even, you know, animal meats, compared to centuries ago when things were a bit more natural. It's like we're not even consuming nutrients compared to them.
Yeah.
And so that's the line, I think, between real and fake. But when you realize that, it's pretty scary. You have to make a lot of big decisions about how you're going to respond to that.
Yeah, but it's scary.
But it's still liberating. That's the thing, is that you might try and, okay, I'm going to try and go off grid a bit. I'm going to try and grow some food, or I'm going to try and raise some chickens. I've got some land. I've got a bit of a back garden. I can raise a few chickens. Okay, try. If you fail, you fail, but it's okay. At least you tried. Try again. I feel like a lot of people nowadays are so afraid to just even try something.
Exactly.
Because, I don't know, again, like with the conditioning, the propaganda, the way they traumatized Truman, we are so traumatized from a young age with fear of failure, or which is a really curious thing, because my generation, millennials, are like the snowflake generation. We were raised to believe that, oh, you know, participating is the most important thing. Everyone got a participation trophy, even if you finished like last place in the league table or whatever. And yet, despite all that, or perhaps because of it, I feel like a lot of my generation is just really apathetic and afraid to go for it, afraid to try, afraid to fail. And it's a very demoralizing thing to observe.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we'll kind of wind up on 3 hours. We'll go 3 hours, I think, because I think it deserves it, because there's so much stuff in this movie. And but before we do that, did you notice at the credits? Did you look through the credits? I saw a co-producer. Okay, and guess what his name was? Richard Luke Rothschild. Did you notice that?
No, I stopped.
Go back and go through the credits and you'll see it. So I looked up Richard Luke Rothschild. He is the son of Jacqueline Rebecca Louise de Rothschild, who is the third child of Edward de Rothschild, the French the French family of the Rothschilds. Well, it's interesting that he was put in there, wasn't it? You know, a Rothschild is in there as well. So, any takes on that one, guys? What you think of that one? A Rothschild was involved in this, and I believe not the director, but the other guy. What's his name? Scott, was it Peter Weir? One of them is Jewish as well. There's always a Jew in here. But again, you know, we talk about Jews as being like these people who are against us, whatever. But are they not just throwing it out to us and saying, "Here, guys, have a look at this. What are you going to make of this?"
I'm looking here. I never noticed him in the credits. According to this article in The Sun from 2020, he's being left penniless and living with his mother after a divorce sparked by divorcing his Playboy model. And it says here that he's not related to the Rothschild family that is involved in banking, who made a fortune in banking, but he's probably related.
No, it's related.
But same thing at the same time, you know, you can't get away from Jewish influence in Hollywood films.
No, you can't. You can't get away from it. No. It's just interesting, yeah. So anyway, can we do just kind of a final summation of the movie then? We'll start with you, Btwixt, and we'll go back around again.
All right.
What's your favorite part? What do you think? You know, let's give a rating out of 10 and all of that. Yeah.
Sure. So, just getting back to the idea of product placement, lest we forget, you know, soap opera. The idea was that they would throw in a little bit of drama, but it was to get the housewives interested in certain detergents. Pox mentioned, you know, authenticity, and we see this meme time and time again of this malnourished young man in a hovel, and he's kind of in the womb position, and he's wearing a virtual reality headset. So this is the option. You know, the propaganda can make you believe, well, it can try its best to make you believe that you're living in a decent world, but the reality is far from that, and a lot of people are finding this out. So, like Truman, you know, it's like getting off a moving vehicle. You're going to have to jump off this moving vehicle. You're going to get hurt one way or another. You might even break your neck and die. But it's better to take the risk than to stay in the vehicle and arrive at your destination, because the destination is not going to be a pleasant one. The ending, it reminded me of a kind of Anton Chekhov short story, because if you've ever read Chekhov, when you get to the end of a short story, it opens out before you. The idea is that the reader will create their own ending. And, you know, once you've read one of these stories, you walk around for the next few hours and you come up with several different endings to the story. This is a great film, and I don't often consider films good enough to give a 9 out of 10, but that's my rating for this one. An excellent film. Yeah,
and what did you make of the acting? I thought Jim Carrey was really good at this, and the guy who played Christoph as well. I thought they were excellent, you know.
Jim Carrey was brilliant, yeah. I think you needed someone who could play a serious character and at the same time a very zany character, because it is a zany situation.
Yeah, it is, yeah, and I think he did it perfectly, you know. And yeah, okay, Oxter, over to you.
I asked you a few minutes ago what was your favorite part, and you all said you talked about. My actual favorite part. So Kerry goes up the stairs and he goes into the dark, and then the film reverts back to the so-called real world. People in the bar cheering, the old couple on the couch are kissing each other. The guy in the bath is pumping water, holding the wall, and he's going crazy. And the very, very, very last
thing, yes, you know, I was going to say that as well. The two guys in the garage.
The two guys in the garage is my favorite scene. So people are cheering. All this, well, in the control room, he said off air, and for the first time in 30 years, the show went off the air. Now they had one a few minutes where they had it off air, but it wasn't offline. This time it went off and the TV went static. And what I liked about the very last scene with the two guys in the garage is my impression of America in 1998. where everyone was watching TV, before really internet blew up. And imagine the scene. You see the feed goes to static, and the two guys, playing the two average Joe Blows. One says to the other, I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Give me the TV guy. What else is on?"
Well, flip the channel. Yeah.
Yeah,
it ends.
Yeah. I thought that was an absolutely beautiful
Yeah,
scene.
that was a great. I meant to bring that up actually, because the two guys at the end, said, "Oh, so the Truman Show is over now."
Yeah,
so,
and what's on? What else are they going to watch?
Yeah.
People are, they were hungry for. Were hungry for television, and you could string them along for 24 hours for 30 years. That's not far from reality. That's not far from reality. As we've talked about, but even before Big Brother and all that, during the 80s, late 80s, 90s, they started carrying TV. Well, especially in Ireland and England, we started having 24-hour TV that were shows and whatever. So you have people that will just sit there in front of the television. That was you don't hear so much about it now. I don't know too many people that have TV or that watch TV, or anyone that hasn't. No one said to me, "Did you see that on TV?" I haven't. Nobody has said that to me in 20 years. It's now that I'm thinking about it, no one is. Are you following this on? No, I see the trends on Twitter and such a show and such a show, but no one ever says to me, "Oh, did you see this?" Maybe TikTok, yes, but the days of TV are gone. The movie, for its time, for the stuff we talked about, the flat earth and different things, aspects about the movie, I give it a 6 out of 10. Jim Carrey, he played a simpleton, which is the equivalent, in my opinion, of most of the people, like, for example, the vaccinated people that are waking up to the reality of what they've just done. They're so simple compared to us. I'm not boasting, but we told them this would happen. That they're injured. So very interesting, good topic. Good to have Pox on. I'd love to do another show with us all again together. That was pick another movie. Listen, you were saying at the beginning, this is where you get a right bit of time out of this. I was saying we'd be over. This will be over in an hour. I'll be over having a glass of wine now in an hour, and here we are at 3 hours. Very. It's good to dialogue like that, because I've only seen the movie 2 or 3 times, unlike other movies like The Matrix, which I see lots of hidden things. And you do, if you are instead of watching non-stop TV, some of these movies are worth from time to time rewatching, and you see lots and lots more stuff. Although I'm not a big fan of Hollywood, and you have to be very careful, because it's all full of hidden propaganda. For me, it wouldn't work, but for most of us, it wouldn't work, because we don't. I haven't been to the cinema. I don't remember the last time I was in a cinema. TV, as I said, it's out 20 years. I've been breaking away. I came into the movement, which is the 9/11 movement in 2003, 2004, and it's an ongoing adventure for me, learning new things, and I learned a lot of new things tonight from you guys, and I thank you for that. Ways of seeing, this wasn't my absolute choice of movie. I'd go back to The Matrix, is the one I probably have seen the most times, but it's good to chinwag with a lot of you, and Pox brought up some good points, some very interesting points, as did Btwixt and yourself, Brizer, and it was quite a good show, and I'm happy to have participated.
Great. So Pox, yourself,
Epstein didn't kill himself.
No, he didn't kill himself, you see, and that's what a lot of people do. They can't handle the shit, so they top themselves. That's a real problem as well, Like looking through the lockdowns and everything, people couldn't handle it, and they jumped off a fucking bridge or something, I mean, fuck, But anyway, Fox, give us your take on the film, and you give us your marks out of 10.
Yeah, like I said, it's a film that had a big effect on my life. I've ruminated over it loads of times. I've seen it many times. I don't know, maybe I even succumbed to Truman syndrome at some point in my childhood, because it really did it really did. I guess the modern vulgar term would be a mind fuck on me.
Yeah.
In my youth when I saw it at such a tender age. But yeah, I would give it a 4 stars out of 5. The performances are great. Everyone was really well cast. The casting director deserves a tip of the hat because also Laura Linney as Truman's wife, just excellently cast in that role. The actress who plays the brunette, Natasha
Michael Hone, she's Irish.
Yeah, and she's got that alluring look, which I think is so
very
perfect
beautiful
for,
woman.
Just she doesn't, take up a lot of screen time, but she had a look to her, those eyes, those features that kind of, in a subtle way.
And she had that personality, but I want to save Truman. Get out of there! Get out of that fucking show, man! Fuck's sake.
But also just that kind of exotic beauty of her, where it's compared to Laura Linney, she's like the typical 1950s blonde housewife look.
Stepford type of thing.
Yeah, the Stepford wife. But then, what's the name of the character? What's the name of Natasha Macaron's character? I forget.
Hold on.
I don't remember. But anyway, she's just very, she's dark hair and clear-eyed, and
Lauren Garland.
Lauren. Yeah. I thought that was a great cast too because she's alluring. You can see why he wants to go back to find her. Jim Carrey is excellently cast. Ed Harris as Christoph, another great performance there. He always delivers. So I think that all the pieces came together. The story itself is very clever and ingenious, and prophetic, and just as we've said, there's so many layers to it. So I think it's a great film. I would recommend it, to anyone who hasn't seen it.
Watch it again and again and again because it's just you get hit with troop bombs every time. Every time you watch it, there's something else will hit you. And for me, like I'm like Btwixt. I give it a 9 out of 10, which I don't normally do for movies. But when I watched it first, something hit me. I didn't know what. That was a couple of years after it came out. And then I've watched it again, and during my waking up process and stuff, people said, "Oh, you need to watch the Truman Show again," and I watched it again, and I kept going back to it, and I just kept seeing things. And what I really enjoyed about it was the progression of him being just Joe Normie in a so-called reality TV show, but his life was good, everything was fine, and then he realized things were going wrong. And you could just see that progression of figuring out that this is all bullshit. And then he makes that escape, and I thought that was quite profound. I thought the acting was brilliant. Like Jim Carrey was great. All the other actors were great. Marlon was great as well, Going, hey, well, I got some beers here we can have a look at. Truman, the whole thing was just brilliantly done. And, it does make you think what kind of world we live in and question reality in itself. What is it? Are we in a simulated reality?
I mean, what it's also there that it just comes to mind is child labor. So if Marlowe had spent said it in the movie that he spent just about all his time with Truman since he was 6 years of age, that he was started work as a child laborer, and that they got him to go for the next 30 years.
That's thrown in there too. Yeah.
I mean,
and Christoph made a lot of money out of that. You could see, and at the end of it, he says, "You're on TV, God damn it, say something," So it just said he didn't give a fuck about Truman, really. He cared about the show, keep the show going.
Ratings, yeah.
Do you remember that time as well when they thought they lost him and they pulled him back? Remember, and they were all doing high fives and everything. And we saved the show, isn't that great? And we're going to keep it going. But eventually it had to come to an end because all good things have to come to an end eventually, right? And then you start again. And it comes back to resets and stuff. Everything resets eventually. When you look at this 2030 reset that the World Economic Forum are talking about, they're trying to control the reset. The thing is that we need to control that reset. Yes, we do need a reset. We need to get rid of this bullshit world we're living in, this corporate shite. communistic Marxist bullshit.
Fractional reserve banking has to go. Fractional reserve banking.
All of that stuff has to go, and then we kind of start again, and hopefully we can do it right next time, you know. So we're living in extremely interesting times, and I think the Truman Show kind of just showed us like that, you know, that life is, you know, you can live in a bullshit world and it can be nice, but is that it? Is that it? You know, you live, you go to work, watch TV, and then you go to bed, and you wake up and do the same thing for 50 odd years, you know, and then you retire and die. Like, is that it? You know, so for me, it was very profound.
Brizer, that's why you know, unemployment hasn't hit the roof yet. Is people aren't prepared to go back to work after COVID. They've had, you know, 3 years of this nonsense, and there's some of them, whether it's deep down, they are not prepared to do what you just said, which is, you know, work 50 years for nothing.
Yeah.
So there is an awakening out there. And you know, we're being guided anyway. Whatever happens, we're still being guided. But you know, I don't see anyone having a lot of faith in doctors, nurses, vaccines, and all sorts of bullshit medicine. I mean, it's an awakening. There is a huge awakening, which is great to see. I mean, I've only been trying for 20 bloody years. I mean, this is an information war. You know, Alex Jones used to say it's the info wars, and he was 100% spot on.
He was right. Yeah.
You know, and you know, the battle is in the battle now. The field is being kind of leveled. We have Twitter back, although Twitter is heavily censored. I got back after a year ban on the 9th of February, and here we are on the 30th of April, and I've already had 2 bans. I was banned for a day and I was banned for a week, and over bullshit. I got a, you know, it's so, you know, we have a chance now. The final battle is here. Well, not the final battle, but the information war is on Twitter. Now that we have seen the Twitter files, we knew we were right. We're all heavily censored. I lost 15 accounts. I lost my Ognir account, but I also signed up. I had 15 other accounts and started from zero again. You know, I'm not too worried about the viewer count. What I'm worried about is trying to find all the people that I follow, you know, which is very difficult. Btwixt, I didn't find you for a while, and by the time I found you, I got Epsteined again. I mean, so many of my profiles, they got me a lot in the first 24 hours. I got a couple for a few weeks. So, you know, it's you know, we're kind of led us up from the team from the Matrix. We're up to broadcast level on Twitter. And occasionally we're going to get knocked off, as what has happened to Pox this week.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, boys, listen, it's been great.
Yeah, listen. I'll wind it up now. I'll just say thanks, guys, for joining us. Pox, Btwixt, Ognir, great chat. We covered a lot here. There was a lot to cover in this movie, anyway. So we went way over 3 hours here, but that was great. It needed to be done because I think this is a profound film. I think. And I would urge anyone who hasn't seen it, watch it and watch it again and again and again, because you just get red-pilled every time. There's just so much good stuff there, and it will get you to question yourself and your own reality and what's this all about, you know. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully the 4 of us will get together and do another one very soon. Yeah.
Look forward to that, and good night.
Good.
Okay, folks, we'll wind it up then. So take care, and until next time, goodbye.